Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to have you with us, as is always the case. We're here. It's July. Summertime, middle of summertime, 4th of July coming up. I got a very first world problem in front of me, and that I am not going to be stateside for the 4th of July. I hate that. It's gonna bother me. But hopefully you've got great plans. Yesterday, we asked the question of, in our start bench cut, pool day or lake day or campfire. I hope you don't have to start bench or cut. I hope you get to participate in and enjoy all of those over the 4th of July weekend. There's room for all of it. Fun show lined up for you today. Tony Jones is going to join us at 1 o'clock. Working backwards, Adrian Denny. Behind the Glass segment, we're going to be talking Utah Mammoth, of course. They are in development camp in Park City. If you want to go watch practice, you can at the Park City ice sheet. Today, I think, is the last day that you're invited to watch camp. But you can go see Tija Ginla. You can go see Caleb Desnoyers. You can see the Russian guys that they signed out of the KHL, Daniil But, Dmitry Simashev.
The Russian Boot. Should we do that?
What? No, we shouldn't. we shouldn't.
Uh-oh.
What happened?
I think we have a missile pointed at us now because of what I just said.
Don't do that.
My bad.
Stop it. Stop making missile jokes. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. Always want to hear from you on the Sean O'Connell Show. By the way, Bill Riley in half an hour. I hope that everyone appreciates what today is. History being made today, I suppose, or history on its new path. We've taken a serious left turn in college sports. Today is the day.
NHL free agency.
Today is the day that your college athletes can start getting paid by the university.
Oh, yeah, that too. There's so much going on today.
That is a wildly significant development that we have just become jaded to because of the perpetual discussion and the 24-hour news cycle and I already heard this 100,000 times. Not only that, not only is there a new method for your players to get paid coming straight from the university, and it looks like we still haven't had, and trust me, we're trying, we still haven't had a lot of clarification on exactly how Utah Athletics is going to divide up the funds. What we know, the actual public statement we've been given from the athletic director's office, is that Utah is enthusiastic and excited to share the wealth with the student athletes, to opt into full participation of the revenue sharing model, $20.5 million, which you already operated at a deficit last year, and so an extra $20.5 million is going to make that deficit more serious. In any case, that's what we know. We're going to participate in this. It looks like most people are going to follow the model of the damages paid out by the House versus NCAA settlement, and that's $2.8 billion for those who need their memory refreshed. $2.8 billion in back pay to student athletes who already completed their NCAA careers. The way that $2.8 billion is going to be divided is 75% of that money is going to football players. 15% of that money is going to men's basketball players. 5% of that money is going to women's basketball players. And 5% of that money is going to everybody else. So if Utah follows the similar model, you're talking about 75% of $20.5 million to the men's football team. 15% to be allocated to men's basketball and Alex Jensen and his efforts to revamp and turn around this program. And, of course, the Red Rocks get a share of that 5%, probably the lion's share of that 5%. And on the other side, women's basketball, 5%. Again, we don't have clarification if Utah will be one of the schools following that revenue distribution model, but the reports out there are that that's what most schools in the Power Four are doing, because that's what the lawsuit yielded in that $2.8 billion worth of damages, back pay. They're just like, yeah, that's how we're going to divide it up. So it seems like that's what is the most likely scenario for Utah, for BYU, et cetera. It's a lot of dough. So that's happening today. Utah Athletics has to turn that corner from today forward. BYU, same thing. Utah State, who, by the way, doesn't have $20.5 million extra. They don't. They're not going to be able to come up with that in order to pay out student athletes.
Yeah,
now,
they're getting what for being part of the course, that Pac-12 deal is probably not for a couple more years, right? But that's
deal doesn't
like
start
what,
2026.
$9 million in media revenue, but that's not for a couple of years. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what kind of increase that they're getting as being part of the Pac-12 and maybe other places. Yeah, that's going to be, if they opt in, because it's still an option for them. It's still on there as part of the approved settlement, right? To schools don't have to opt in to paying, or is it required?
No, you don't have to opt in.
Yeah. So
you're allowed to, and if you want to remain competitive at the elite level, it's mandatory.
Yeah.
It's not even probably, you have to, right?
I don't know if Group of Five, it'd be interesting to see how many Group of Five schools are going to, because they're not getting the media money to say, hey, we've got, that makes you go, we've got this, or we can, if we don't have it, we have a reasonable path to getting it here soon. I don't know if there's Group of Five schools that, and Pac-12 is going to be part of that Group of Five. It's going to be Group of Six, I guess. I'd be surprised if many of them opt in.
I just don't see how you can financially make it work, unless, of course, you can somehow figure out how to cut other programs to save yourself that money, and how you can do that while remaining Title IX compliant seems like an actual impossibility. But in any case, that's happening. The other thing that I don't think we've talked enough about is the fact that the NCAA is now handing off enforcement responsibilities and disciplinary responsibilities to a new body, a brand new LLC that was just created this year, the College Sports Commission. And of course, the NCAA is going to have its fingers all up in this and be puppeteering a lot of stuff. But the NCAA is, at least on the surface level, handing the responsibility off now to a separate body. The NCAA has been the iron fist that rules over collegiate athletics since time immemorial. I mean, I have never known in my 41 years a time where the NCAA wasn't the authority over coaches, players, eligibility, rule changes, officials, conferences. I've never known a time where the NCAA was not the body that was, for the most part, exercising its power in misunderstood or impossible for me to understand ways. Is a better way to say that. Like looking the other way on certain things and coming down hard on recruiting violations for UNLV and Boise State. And did you see what North Texas did? The rest of us are over here being like, Cam Newton had a bag of cash from Auburn. Laramie Tunsil was literally saying to people, yeah, they paid my bills and my mom's bills. And the NCAA was just like, oh, well, that's a crazy story, guys. Anyway, look over here. And the
Can you believe North Texas?
Yeah, but what about the Mean Green? How dare they? So the NCAA today hands over its power, at least ostensibly, to an organization that is newly created, that is still hiring most of its workforce, and is being overseen by a former Major League Baseball executive. The College Sports Commission, who will do its level best to decide whether NIL deals are actual name, image, and likeness endorsement deals and rather than pay-for-play deals, the teeth of that organization, the ability of that organization to actually enforce any of the things, any of the stated goals of this settlement and of the attempted settling of the insanity in college sports right now, it's going to take 5 years before we know the real answer, but that answer is probably the most important answer we have or we're waiting for in college sports right now. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it that way, but when you think about the crucial way in which this sort of change is supposed to shape the future of college sports, I mean, we're talking an existential crisis, I don't think for Utah and for BYU, but certainly yes for Utah State. And certainly yes for mid-major programs. And when you get down to the Weber State and Southern Utah level, I mean, we're talking, these are dire importance type decisions. And those decisions are now being made by a new body that doesn't have the infrastructure, the size, the reach, the scope of the NCAA, who, by the way, has been terrible at figuring all this stuff out for decades. And now we're just expecting that because this settlement came into play, and now there's way more money, there's a trillion more cookies in the cookie jar, and you're just like, all right, now figure out how it works. I am a skeptic, to say the least. But that's happening today in college sports. Wild. It's like,
makes you really want to be an AD, doesn't it?
Look, by the way,
or college president for that matter. Their heads are spinning trying to figure this out too.
Mark Harlan, the Utah Athletic Department, we've reached out and been like, hey, we need to talk. Let's have you on the air. And they're like, absolutely yes. We definitely want to do that. But there's a lot of work to do right now that is far more important than 20 minutes or 30 minutes on the radio. And I agree. I'm selfish, so I'm like, no, but come talk about it. It's like, let us do the work that matters, and then we'll circle around and we'll talk soon.
And part of that work, to go inside baseball with people here, part of that work is figuring out how they're going to frame their messaging, how they're going to say and present what, and this is not just University of Utah. Every school every school in the nation is going to have to deal with this in some way, whether it's deciding to opt in or opt out. And if they opt in, what are they going to do to get enough money to pay this $20.5 million to their student athletes? And so the messaging's important too, because the last thing any of these ADs and athletic departments want to do is say something that's taken as gospel when it's really just their best guess, right? So that's part of why you're probably not going to be hearing from your favorite school's athletic director, including Mark Harlan and here in the home of the Utes or other places, for a little while longer, because they got to get all their ducks in a row. They got to make these decisions, and then they got to figure out how they're going to say it, right? So we'll be patient with them, and we trust that we'll be able to talk to Mark here soon enough.
All right, start bench cut today. I threw out a couple last night, and I've refreshed them this morning. And we're going to play start bench cut as promised with Utah running backs. We're not going to do the Pac-12 era of Utah running backs today. We'll do that one tomorrow, okay? Today, non-Power 5 era running backs, start bench cut. And I will preface the question with this. I will tell you this. The start bench cut in this one so far is the hardest, even to come down to the three that we've done. And people are going to have strong opinions one way or another about whether or not I got the right 3 on the start bench cut list, but I think we did, James. I went through and I looked at all the record books, and I went down to what I think are the important numbers: yards per carry, yards per game, touchdowns scored, things like that, okay? All these guys, you compare their stats to try to put it in context of like, all right, well, what about, was he a great player on a great team? You know how hard it was for me to leave Matt Asiata off of this list?
Yeah.
He was the running back for what I think might be the best football team in Utah history. Marty Johnson was our starting running back on that Fiesta Bowl team. We ran the ball a lot, James. Marty Johnson doesn't get to be on this list because he had one great season. All right?
Those are tough cuts, man.
Eddie Wide, who was also part of that Sugar Bowl team that wasn't his best year, Eddie Wide had an even better career than Matt Asiata did. He doesn't make the list. Del Rogers doesn't make the list. I mean, there's guys that should have, could have, maybe would be on this 3-person list of start, bench, cut. And here we are, okay? Start, bench, cut, Utah running backs from the pre-Power 5 era. Eddie Johnson, the all-time leader in Utah rushing yards.
Fastest of them all.
Fast Eddie, okay? You can still see him at games on the sideline every now and again.
And you'll hear the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, call him out. He loves himself some Eddie Johnson. He'll
As
say,
you should.
Is that the fastest of them all? When you hear Bill say that, Eddie Johnson's somewhere in the vicinity.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Fast Eddie, and he's an awesome guy, great person to talk to, very stylish. I don't know. He's got to be, I don't know. How old do you think Fast Eddie Johnson is now? I mean, he's got to be approaching 60 at least.
Did he play early 90s or was it 80s?
No, Eddie Johnson was in
Or was it
84, 85,
Okay.
86, 87. So
mid
I guess
to late 80s?
Yeah. So I mean,
coming up on 40 years ago.
coming up
So
on 40 years ago. So he's approaching 60.
He's approaching 60, if not a little older than 60 at this point.
And I can promise you this: if we were standing next to each other, you'd think he was the younger man. Black don't crack. Fast Eddie looks great these days. Okay, Eddie Johnson, Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala, the biggest number 6, the beast,
Gesundheit to you.
the former St. Louis high school product. Like, the dude is an absolute legend. Okay, Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala, 95, 96, 97, and Mike Anderson. And remember, this is them as Utes. Chris and Mike both went on to successful careers in the NFL, but that's not what we're factoring in. So, start, bench, cut. Eddie Johnson, Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala, and Mike Anderson.
All right, so I'm familiar with Eddie Johnson. I'm not near as familiar with the other two, OC. You'll have to forgive me on that. I know that Eddie Johnson is he still the all-time career rushing yards leader? I thought that was Zach Moss now.
He's the former career rushing yards
so
leader.
he's number 2 now. But he
Sorry,
held that for a long time.
The non-Power 5 rushing yards leader.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go. But second overall in school history, and he held that record for a very long time. I'm familiar with Eddie Johnson.
Let me give
me
Eddie's
some
numbers,
context
okay?
around these 3 guys.
Let me give you his numbers, okay? He rushed. Now, he was a rare player who got 5 years of eligibility because of a medical red shirt in 1987.
Okay.
Okay? So his freshman year, he rushed for 1,000 yards. His sophomore year, he had a serious dip in production because of some injuries. I guess that would be his junior year, another 1,000-yard season. The next year, he only played 2 games, got the medical red shirt. In 1988, he finished with 750 yards, okay? Over the course of his career, 3,219 rushing yards, 5.7 yards per carry, 26 rushing touchdowns. He was also an adept receiver out of the backfield. He finished his career with 8.8 yards per catch, just under 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and a total of 35 touchdowns, 6.2 yards per play from scrimmage for Eddie Johnson. Okay, and like you said,
those are
second
some numbers,
place.
man.
Yes. And he was just an absolute monster, right? Now, Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala was, I will admit, this is the guy that his cousin's kids played on my Little League football teams, are some of my lifetime best friends.
Okay.
All right.
So you got a bias there.
There's a
probably
bias
because of personal tie to him. Yeah.
When this dude would show up, he was at the University of Utah when we were playing Little League football, and he would show up on like a Saturday. I think he came to like 3 of our games. And when you walk through a crowd of people and there's a professional athlete in the room and that you don't have to know what sport they play, that you can visually identify, oh, that's somebody. I mean, it's easy with basketball players because they're 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
But like even an NFL player, for the most part, you look and you're just like, oh, that guy, he's built a little bit different.
Yeah.
What is that? That was Chris. Chris was, his calves were as big as your thighs. All right. His back is like 2 people crammed together next to one another, just incredibly wide. He's a legend, not only because of his production, but because of his presence. So Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala, 5.7 yards per carry, 22 touchdowns, 87 yards per game, by the way. He only had 1 receiving touchdown, but in 3 years finished with 23 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per play from scrimmage when you add everything in for Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala. All right, and to put into context, I think it's important, and the reason why I narrowed it down to these guys rather than like the Matt Asiatas, there's sustainability. There's more than one great season. For Chris, he averaged 5.9 yards, 5.8 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. Every time, he only played 3 years, and he went to the NFL. Every time the guy touched the ball, he was getting you halfway to a first down. All right? Now, Mike Anderson had even less consistency because he was a JUCO guy. So Mike Anderson's numbers, comparing him to the other two, were, I mean, perhaps I'll let you decide whether you're more or less impressed. Okay, 5 yards per carry, 5 yards per play from scrimmage, 24 touchdowns in 2 years. He left Utah averaging over the course of those 2 seasons 102 yards per game, which I believe is still a record for a Utah running back. 22 touchdowns on the ground, 2 touchdowns receiving, 24 touchdowns in 2 years. So remember, Eddie had 35 touchdowns in 5 years. Start, bench, cut, Eddie Johnson, Mike Anderson, Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala. And yes, it was very, very hard for me to omit guys like Juan Johnson, guys like Del Rogers, guys like the aforementioned Matt Asiata and Eddie Wide. I honestly thought for sure, okay, I got to put someone on there from the Sugar Bowl team, from the Fiesta Bowl team. No, they weren't. First of all, they were on much better teams with a lot more offensive weapons and still weren't as productive from a per-play standpoint or even from a touchdowns over the year standpoint for the most part. So these are my 3 candidates. I can stand by it. Eddie Johnson, Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala, Mike Anderson. Start, bench, cut.
I'm starting fast Eddie. Fastest of them all, Eddie Johnson.
Okay, and his 3,200 career rushing yards.
And 35 touchdowns,
okay.
Combined touchdowns. Like,
yep.
Come on, man.
Yep.
And then I'm benching Chris. I'm gonna try the name. Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala.
Correct.
Did I get that?
You
Chris
got it right.
Fuamatu Ma'afala. I'm gonna say it with more confidence now that I got the sign off, and then I'm cutting Mike Anderson. That is so tough, though. Not
an easy thing to do. And actually, Mike is on the phone line right now to talk to you. But no.
Any of these guys any of the guys we cut, by the way, you're welcome to call in. Any of the guys we start and bench, you're welcome to call in and give us your thoughts. 877-353-0700. We'd love to hear from these Ute legends. All three guys on all these start bench cuts, legends in their own right. But the game is start, bench, cut. We got to bench and cut 2 of you guys. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the game.
You got to do it. I'm sorry that it has to be done.
It's really tough. I'll tell you that much. This one, I think you're right, though. Toughest of the ones we've done so far.
At Real OC Sports, 877-353-0700. People are taking umbrage. Some people are just recusing themselves from the start bench cut. They say, I can't do it. And look, if you want to make a case for any of the other names that I could have certainly put on this list, you're welcome to. But this is the one that I'm sticking with. Also, start bench cut today, entry-level fireworks, James.
Entry-level fireworks.
Entry-level fireworks, like kids' fireworks, okay? Obviously, I'm a father of young children, and so you can't go to the fireworks store and just be like, all right, we're getting the biggest, baddest fireworks in the world right now. But poppets, sparklers, smoke bombs, start bench cut, go.
Ooh, starting the poppets are the little rocks, right?
You throw the little thing. And
starting those are
obviously no
at
brainer.
any age. Those are a ball.
They're fantastic.
They're fantastic. Sparklers, I'm benching, and I'm cutting smoke bombs because I always hated smoke bombs.
Man, smoke bombs get no love.
I always hated them. They were just annoying.
I love the smoke bomb. You put that
Didn't
bad
they
boy
smell
down.
a little bit too, or is that not every?
Yes, they smell weird. They have that awful sulfuric kind of like.
The other ones, of course, all fireworks have some of that smell, but some of them are a lot. The smell is not near as prominent as the smoke bomb.
The smoke bomb and I was thinking about, the snake.
Oh, the snake's fantastic. I'd take the snake over the smoke bomb.
Oh, see, those things were just so messy, though. They're so gross because, like, they look cool. You light them on fire, and then they start to expand and go all crazy. But then you got to clean them up, and your hands get all charcoaly.
Not if you do it in the street. It's just there. I'm just kidding.
Kids, don't light fireworks off in the middle of the streets, okay? Start bench cut your entry-level fireworks, and pre-Power 5 level, so pre-Pac-12 Utah football running backs. Eddie Johnson, Chris Matu-Ma'afala, Mike Anderson.
That's tough.
Mike Anderson, 100 yards a game as a Ute. If you extrapolate it out, and I know you can't do it directly, he would have ended up with, if he played all 4 years, he could have ended up with 40-something touchdowns for Utah.
That's amazing.
At the pace he was at least. Anyway. All right, we'll take a quick one here. Bill Riley's going to play some start bench cut with us. Also, we'll talk to him about the Ring of Honor inductees. Coach Mack, like we talked about last year when this whole thing was introduced, Ron McBride's going in as part of the year 2 class. It was Alex Smith by himself last year. It's Ron McBride and Roy Jefferson. We'll tell you more about who that man is when we talk with Bill Riley next on the Sean O'Connell Show, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Let it build. Let it build, everybody. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome in the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. This conversation brought to you by Handy and Handy. Big firm experience, small firm attention at Handy and Handy. Bill Riley, welcome. How are you, sir?
Sean O'Connell, I'm great. Do you know what today is?
Today is the day that you can pay your college athletes, that the NCAA turns over their authority to the College Sports Commission. It's a lot of different things today. NHL free agency. What else we got today?
It's the 1-year anniversary of you taking over the show from me.
Whoa! Happy anniversary to us here on ESPN.
Way to
700.
go. Way to bury the lead.
I actually didn't know that.
That's why I'm here, to fill in those gaps.
Good luck. There's a lot of gaps to be filling in, Bill. All right. We got some start bench cut. We'll get to that here in a second. The announcement came yesterday, as we like to call it, in the junk mail, the official Utah football email from Keeler McJunkin. The Ring of Honor inductees this coming year, Ron McBride and Roy Jefferson. Now, I don't expect a lot of people to have good context on an All-American wide receiver from the 1960s for the University of Utah, but those two names being the next two to go up on the wall. Of course, you know my love for Coach Mack. Were these two the no-brainers? Is this the right call to get these guys in now?
Well, yeah, I'm a big believer in honoring people while they're still with us.
Agreed.
And Mack's 85 and Roy Jefferson's 81 years old. So if you're going to put those guys in, and they both certain Mack for sure, there's no doubt as a coach, a head coach, all of it. And obviously Roy had a great career in an era before Utah was kind of a household name. Then went on to have a nice NFL career as well. I think this is the right move. I think I think they're two great selections. Roy was here in the kind of the early to mid 60s. He was an all WAC wide receiver. Then obviously went on, again, playing in a day and age where they didn't throw the ball like they do today. And then obviously Mack, we know what he is. Mack resurrected Utah football. Utah football was kind of in the wilderness a bit, a solid but not spectacular program, couldn't beat its rival. And Mack, who had been here as a position coach, came back as a head coach and laid the foundation for what is Utah football today. I mean, the man that, coached with him, his father coached with him, has built upon it. Yeah, there were the 2 years of Urban that were really, really cool, but, I think Urban gets a lot of credit, rightfully so. It's clearly what Kyle's done's been great, but if there's no Ron McBride, I don't think Utah football is what it is today.
And look, what the record books are enough of a reason to put Ron McBride in. When you talk about the human element of who he is as a coach, who he is as a person, what he is in the lives of so many of his players, and how he stays that way even into his 80s, and he still cares about people who played for him 30 and 40 years ago. I mean, it really is remarkable. I don't know if it's possible the same way now as it was back then to get this close to your players, to develop the long-term relationships with players. But that was such an important part, and is such an important part of Ron McBride's legacy, at least with the guys who played on the team. I don't know if fans care as much about that, but the reason I bring it up is because, Kyle Whittingham has been there forever, and there's a lot of guys who've come through the program, and he's got great relationships with some of them, with a lot of them. Do you think it's with the business of college football and the transfer portal being what it is, do you think that era of your coach is like a second father figure, that might be going the way of the dodo in college sports at least?
I don't think it's going to be as common, Sean. I think you'll still have those. I mean, there'll still be those connections. I just don't think they'll be as frequent or is. I mean, it felt like Ron was everybody's friend and father on the roster 1 through 85 or 100. I don't know that you'll get that as many connections, just because to have those connections, you have to have time. Those things don't just develop overnight. And I think because of the now transient nature of collegiate athletics and especially football, you're not going to have that as much. You'll still have it. I mean, coaches will still have relationships. It just, I don't think, will be as many or as often as it's been down through the years now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I'm going to give you an unfair question and say, if we project out 20 years, is there anyone on Utah's roster today that ends up having their name up there on that stadium next to Ron McBride and Alex Smith and Roy Jefferson?
20 years from now on this current roster.
Well, somebody who plays on this current roster. Is there someone? Because I mean, look, the bar is incredibly high. You have to be an All-American, or you have to be a top NFL draft pick. We were given the criteria last year. You have to not just be a top NFL draft pick, but have gone on to NFL success. So, and is there anyone on this year's roster that you'd be willing to make the bet? Yeah, that guy has a good chance of getting himself up there.
I'll give you some option. I think Lander Barton is a guy like that. He I think is poised. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. I think he's all Big 12 caliber player. Whether that's All-American or not, we'll see. He's going to play in the league. I mean, Cody has maxed out his potential. He's had a terrific run. Jackson as well. Lander's the better of those three, the three brothers that played football at Utah. So I think he would have a chance. Trying to think of somebody, a guy like a Spencer Fano might have a chance. He's going to be an All-American. Maybe Caleb Lomu as well. You know, they're going to have those All-American caliber honors. They're going to be likely first-round draft picks, which probably means in the offensive line a lengthy NFL career unless you're sidetracked by injuries. So I would say if I had to pick somebody now defensively, I'll go Lander Barton. And then on offense, a Lomu or a Fano or both of those guys.
Bill Riley joining me here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking, of course, Utah football, 60 days away from the start of Utah football season. Big 12 Media Days are next week, a week from today, in fact, at the Star in Frisco, Texas, Dallas Cowboys headquarters. There will be no preseason poll to react to because the league abandoned that after how bad it was last year. Which I love, Bill. I think that's hilarious that, when you pick a team dead last and then they end up being your conference champion and just going, you know what, we're not doing it anymore.
But here's the thing, though. Here's and I saw that news. And again, it doesn't matter one bit in the big scheme of things, but they were fun.
Yeah.
And they were picked by the media. It wasn't like anybody held anybody to it. In fact, it kind of made for a better storyline, lad. To me, I mean, ASU's picked dead last. You go last to first. To me, I thought ASU and Kenny Dillingham embraced that, and they've certainly played off it this entire offseason too. There is going to be a preseason all-league team because I had a ballot and I filled it out and sent it out this morning. But I don't know why you wouldn't do that. I don't know what obviously I think the ADs and coaches probably had some say in that. I think they're fun, gives you a little, especially, when you host a radio show for 3 hours a day in the summertime, it gives you a little something to talk about. But I don't quite know the understanding of just because everybody was so wrong last year. Utah would have been at or near the top, but they had a key injury at the most important position. Sometimes injuries happen. I don't know. It just seems weird after doing it for all these years and everybody else doing it just to abandon it. But anyway,
the thing is, we'll end up with plenty of Big 12 preseason polls. There just won't be the official one that we get to talk about on those days.
Well, one from people that actually cover the league. That's the thing. I mean, the ballot's coming from people like you and me and people around the league that actually know the teams well. No offense to our friends at Athlons or Lindy's or Sports. They don't know the league quite as well. But again, they're for fun, so it really doesn't matter.
All right, tracing back to a couple of the names that you just mentioned, in Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, there's preseason All-American lists are coming out, and Fano's a first-team All-American, I think, on the Walter Camp list for the preseason. And the expectations for both of those guys are incredibly high. When we talk about this, has never happened in Utah football history. If those guys stay healthy and if those guys play up to the potential that so many people think they have, we have never seen two first-round draft picks on the same offensive line at the University of Utah. It hasn't happened. So what's an appropriate level of expectation for what that means for the offense, what that means for Devin Dampier, and what that means for Wayshawn Parker and all the other running backs when you've got not only experienced middle, but that potential on the edges? How do we craft our expectations for the offense based on that player personnel?
Well, I think you hit on something really important there. The middle three guys are like 3-year starters themselves. You know what I'm saying? Your center and your two guards, Mokafisi, actually Togi I started last year, but Mokafisi and Kump. I mean, there are a lot of snaps on that line, Sean. So as much as Lomu and Fano are getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so, those guys are fantastic. Those three middle guys are very good and very experienced. I think it means big things. First and foremost, what it means is you're going to be able to lean on the run game. You know, we know that the one real big development in fall camp is going to be who's catching the ball, who are the top 6 wide receivers. Well, when you've got that offensive line and you've got a quarterback who can move and do what Devin Dampier does, and you've got, a stud starter and 3 really good backup running backs in the rotation, I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And you and I both know this. As much as people love to see it air it out down the field, when you can control the line of scrimmage and dominate the line of scrimmage. And let's be very fair. The Big 12 is pretty good defensively, but it's not elite necessarily in the trenches on the defensive side. I think Utah is going to be able to do what they want to do on the ground, which is going to give a little bit more kind of leeway and grace in that pass game just a little bit. You're not relying on Dampier to throw it 50 times a game and air it out, because when you can control that ground game, and it takes the life out of a defense when you're just gashing them for 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 yards. And then all of a sudden they're loading up the box, and then you can hit that play action after you've run it 4 or 5 or 6 straight times. So I think the expectation should be high. Heck, I talked to Jim Harding a week and a half ago. We've got a podcast series of kind of coaching one-on-ones with all the different coaches on the coaching staff that are going to drop here in the coming weeks. And, Jim didn't shy away from it. He said, hey, it's the best offensive line on paper that I've coached here. He goes, they've got to go out and prove it. But he goes, the talent that's up there, it's as good as I've ever had here at Utah. And he's coached some pretty good offensive lines. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having really high expectations for the offensive line. Again, assuming they're healthy, although they do have pretty good depth, and being able to control the line of scrimmage up front this year.
Bill Riley for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things Utah football. All right, let's play some start, bench, cut. First,
what's our position?
Utah running backs pre-Power 5 era, so before the Pac-12. Okay. I've got Eddie Johnson, Mike Anderson, Chris Fuamatu-Ma'afala. Start, bench, cut.
Well, I'm cutting Ma'afala. No offense to Chris, but I don't think he works as well in today. He was just a bruising between the tackles guy. I'm benching Mike Anderson. As good as Mike was, and he was really, really good. And I'm going to go with Eddie Johnson because of the staying power. He was the all-time leading rusher. He basically ran for 4 years. He was nicknamed the fastest of them all. He was really, really good. So I'm going to start Eddie Johnson. I'm going to bench Mike Anderson. Nice to have him there in case. And then I'm going to cut, not that I want to, but I'm playing by the rules of the game, Chris Fuamatu-Ma'afala.
All right. Chris is listening right now. And he just texted me and asked for the location of your office, and we're gonna send him your way. You can have a discussion with Chris about it. Also, entry level fireworks. Start, bench, cut. Poppets, sparklers, smoke bombs.
The poppet's the one you throw on the ground, and they're wrapped in that little tissue paper.
Yes.
Oh man, those are all pretty weak.
Well, they're entry level. They're for kids, man.
No, black cats are entry level. Why don't you black cats on there?
Okay, Bill Riley's a wild man.
You're not gonna blow a finger. You're just gonna burn yourself on a black cat.
If it can't,
I'm not talking about anything aerial.
If it can't hurt you, then Bill doesn't want it in the fireworks.
Really and truly. I mean, what? I know you've got little girls who are young, but Sean, come on. You got to start them out the right way. What were those again? Poppets, bomb, and what was the other?
Sparklers. And
sparklers are the worst. There's nothing at all fun about a sparkler. Poppets, if you light them on fire with the punk, you can have some fun with them. Smoke bombs, I always found were 50-50 at best. I mean, you'd light them, and sometimes they wouldn't do anything, and sometimes you'd get a little puff of smoke, or sometimes it would go full. So I'll go. I'm benching sparklers because they're no fun. And when they do go off, you get burned a lot with sparklers. So we're benching the sparklers. I'm sorry, cutting the sparklers, benching the smoke bomb, and starting the poppets because, again, you can have some fun with those things. Throw them at your friends, stuff like that. So I'll go that way. But that was a pretty weak trio of start, bench, and cut right there.
That's the whole point. They're the weak fireworks.
Yeah, but I'm only on once a week. You're probably going to have the good ones like the M80s and the bottle rockets and stuff tomorrow or the next day.
All right. How about this? Start, bench, cut. The mortars, you drop them in the tube. They fly airborne, the big ones. Okay?
Yep.
Mortars, the big bad boy firecracker. Like the M80, sure.
Yep.
Okay? And then I don't even know what the other one would be, like the wild spinners that fly all over the place.
Ones that, like the pagodas and things that spin and light on fire. Well, I mean, those are fun, but those are getting cut because there's not enough to them. So you should have put the spinners on the weak ones. But anyway, I'm gonna go with like the mortars need to be benched because that's gonna kill somebody. I mean, there's always the ER on 4th of July and around it. I'll go with the starting the M80s and the high end firecrackers and stuff that might if you do it the wrong way take a finger.
Okay,
it's just that one little bit of sense of danger in there. The mortars could actually kill somebody, so that's going to be benched.
All right, so Bill wants the Jason Pierre-Paul. It'll blow your finger off. You're starting that. You're benching the mortar. That you really do have to be careful. And then there really isn't a good third for this category because those wild spinners, they might burn you a little bit. They're not going to hurt you bad. The other ones.
Yeah, the wild spinner is a step up from your sparkler poppet, but it's not quite in the, super dangerous. It might spin and burn you or get under a car and you're worried about something there, but it's not really going to do a lot of damage.
All right, so something we learned on the show today, Bill Riley, bit of a pyromaniac. And I'm not
got it from my dad. My dad used to like fireworks, so we would get them from time to time in the summertime and have a little bit. Although we couldn't have a lot of aerial stuff in Kansas City because very dry in the summer, not as dry as it is here. But a lot of my neighborhood had wood roofs, like the old wood shakes.
Oh yeah, okay.
And if you had anything aerial, you might set a roof on fire. They didn't have a lot of comp roofs in my neighborhood.
Must be a generational thing, Bill, because your dad and my dad are from that same era and about the same age, and actually similar personality-wise from what I know of your dad. But the only rule I've ever seen my dad break willingly is we would drive to Evanston when I was a kid, and we would buy the illegal fireworks because my dad was just like, no, we're not having stupid, crappy fountain sparklers for fireworks. We would go buy the mortars when they were like all the way illegal in Utah. It's the only time my dad was willing to break the rules on anything in life.
Yeah, we would go because they were kind of legal around Kansas City and maybe to Missouri we'd go, short drive. But, yeah, that was always fun because he was going to pick out some good stuff that he was going to fire off, but he would tell my brother and I, you have $10. And back then, $10 would go a pretty good distance. And you go $10 and you get to, load your basket up with the stuff you wanted. So it was pretty cool. The only thing worse, by the way, I was just thinking about this on your terrible list for today of the fireworks would have been if you put those snakes.
We talked about that as an alternative. Those snakes, they suck. They're just a huge mess.
Oh, and sometimes they're kind of like smoke bomb's cousin. But you'd light them, and then they'd peter. Yeah, they were terrible, and they stunk too. They had a terrible smell about them.
Oh, this has been even better than I thought it was going to be. The fireworks segment.
You know what the best part about this is? This segment's brought to us by Handy and Handy, and I'm going to bet Garrett and Preston probably have some personal injuries cases tied into fireworks this time of year.
Absolutely, I guarantee they do.
801-264-6677 or handylawutah.com. They're awesome. 45 years of experience. They're kind enough to sponsor my hit every week with Sean and Spence as well. Hopefully, you or somebody you know don't have to call them over the 4th of July or July 24th. But if you need it, that's what they're there for. Handy and handy.
What a segue. That's how you know Bill's an absolute radio pro. Great stuff as always. Appreciate your time, Bill. Enjoy the 4th of July weekend.
Talk to you next week, Sean.
The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, a bit of a pyromaniac. Who would have thought? Bill's like, I don't want a
fireworks snob too.
Unless
Bill
it can
Riley.
hurt you.
We love it.
I'm not interested.
We also learned that Bill doesn't like to spell his name with fireworks.
Yeah,
that's the fun part of
sparklers.
sparklers. You don't just hold them.
You wave them around. And by
you
the
make
way,
shapes. And
you make shapes in the air.
You spell your name. Yeah,
everyone knows. And then he's right though. Someone's always getting burnt.
True.
And when you're talking about those metal sparklers with the silver, compound caked on there, then after you burn that thing down, you have just an absolute eye poke hazard that is also red hot.
Yeah, if you're thinking very safety centric with this, maybe sparkler is the cut.
Sparkler. Hey, listen, you can't cut them though because the kids want sparklers.
They do. Bill didn't want them as a kid.
Poppets are the best because they're safe and they're fun. Okay? Smoke bombs, also great. The sparkler, I'm cutting sparkler. You can't do it. I'm cutting sparkler because I don't want my kids to get their eyes poked out with a red hot poker. All right?
As a new dad, I probably should have met mine and cut sparklers too. But he's young enough. He's not touching the fireworks anyway. So I still got time to remember what I liked as a kid.
All right. Take a quick one here. We're going to come back. I just want to read the resume of Coach Ron McBride, who's going into the Ring of Honor, the junk mail that we got. People know Coach Mack. I don't think people really understand what Coach Mack did for Utah football. I'm going to make sure you know that in this next segment. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, fellas, we've told you about the Steel Vault in the heart of Holiday. If you have not gone by, it's on you at this point. Tell you what, I know it's hard as a man to go in and ask for help with your receding hairline. If you're worried about your testosterone levels, it can be a little bit embarrassing, and you don't want to go in. You don't want to, like, take that initiative just for yourself. I'm going to solve the problem for you, all right? Go in, book a massage, book a red light therapy treatment, something like that for your significant other, for your girlfriend, for your wife, okay? And while you are there, since you already made the trip, tell the folks at the Steel Vault, hey, you know what? I actually think I might want to do something about these wrinkle lines, these smile lines. I might want to do something about this receding hairline. I might want to do something about my testosterone levels. Now you've killed two birds with one stone. You've done something special for that special someone, but you're also taking care of yourself. And because the Steel Vault is so good at all of it, they can take care of you and your significant other. Everybody leaves happy. And you're going to be a hero at home. Maybe it's a little more personal than that even. Maybe you're worried about the libido. That part of your life is not as rewarding as it should be. They can help you. And they'll do it in the least invasive way possible. The privacy is not something you have to worry about. It is a world-class facility, and it's right there in the heart of Holiday. 801-878-9976. Tell them OC sent you. Tell them ESPN 700 is where you heard this recommendation. They're going to give you 20% off whatever service, okay? Free consultation or your first consultation online at steelvault.com. There's a big book now button. Don't wait. Don't waste any more time. Do it right now. Steel Vault will take care of you. In Holiday, again, tell them ESPN 700 and the Sean O'Connell Show sent you. Before we get to Adrian Denny, we talk a little hockey on the other side. I referenced this when we were having a conversation with Bill Riley, and we talked about it last year when it was announced that Utah was instituting a Ring of Honor and that Alex Smith was going to be the first inductee. I immediately said, you got to put Ron McBride in, and you got to put Ron McBride in next. You got to put him in now because you got to do it while he's around. Now, Coach Mack's health has been fine, but he is 85 years old, as Bill mentioned. And he's got so many people in this Utah football family that he has been the man for. He's been father figure, everyone's favorite uncle, grandfather figure, the coach that saved your life, that brought you out of a bad situation, that stood by you when you had your struggles in college. He has done that for so many people. I really do think that era of college football is over. I think that version of a college football coach is gone. It's too businesslike right now. You don't have guys for 4 and 5 years so you can establish that level of relationship. They already come to you as a more ready-made product now because you're a professional when you get to major college football, and Utah is very much in major college football right now. This is a guy that was showing up in, Hawaii. He was going to Tonga. He was going to Samoa before it was cool, before it was popular, and he was sitting down with parents and saying, I can get your kid not only a football career, but an education that is going to set him up for life. He was going into places in Southern California that other coaches who look like him were not willing to go because that neighborhood is not for the white guy. Like, he was doing that, and he was getting people out of these situations, all while he was also balancing, like, the Boy Scout straight-lace type individuals. He established, in a lot of ways, the Polynesian Pipeline, him and Lavelle Edwards, who was his good friend and rival. The Polynesian Pipeline, certainly to the Utah schools. He's a pioneer in the sport. He's a pioneer in Utah football's modern history because when he arrived, James, do you know how many years it had been since Utah was in a bowl game when Ron McBride got the job?
I don't.
It had been 25 years
Holy
since Utah
cow.
won a bowl game.
I didn't realize it had been that long. My goodness. Since they had won a bowl game.
And he immediately got them back to it. I mean, the man just did special things. They had not played in a bowl game in 25 years. Over that 25-year stretch previous to Ron McBride's arrival, they'd only had 8 winning seasons out of those 25 years.
I knew that it wasn't that there weren't that many winning seasons. I did not know it was that big a gap between bowl wins. That's incredible. And then it's all been up, rise from there since he took over as head coach. The program, while he was there, was a steady, slower build, and then obviously the last 20 years has been, new heights that the program's never seen. But it started with him.
When he showed up, the in-state rivalry, the Holy War, was like fizzling out and dang near dead because BYU had been so dominant.
It was was it a 9 or 10 game win streak when Scott Mitchell broke it as the starting quarterback late 80s? They had basically the same dominance that Utah just recently enjoyed.
And Ron McBride made it a rivalry again.
Yeah, he made it even.
He made it possible
Absolutely
for
did.
you to beat your rival in state. And BYU that was not so far removed from their national championship. They were churning along. They were chugging along. They had a Heisman Trophy winner not too long before that. They were developing the Steve Youngs of the world. Coach came in 1990. 4 years later, they were a top 10 team. In a social media world, in a current landscape of college football world, he would have been poached by an SEC school and given a $10 million contract.
He absolutely would have. And you personally, I know you don't like to make these kind of things about you. You didn't play for him at Utah, but you went on to play for him at Weber State. So you know him pretty well, being part of a couple of his teams, right?
For one of his teams, yeah, up at
teams.
Weber State. And look, the way that I made that connection and got that opportunity with Coach Witt, I think, with Coach McBride, I think is the more important reality for what his legacy is at Utah football. I went to a wedding in the summer for one of his former players, and that's where I ran into him. And we had known each other because of camps in high school and things like that, but he had no reason to remember me. And we remade the connection, basically. And he was just like, how's it going? He knew my situation in Utah. He knew I was a walk-on. And he was, how's it going there? And I was like, it's terrible. It's frustrating. I'm not going to play. I'm working hard. It doesn't matter. He said, well, when do you graduate? I said, I'm already graduating. He said, well, then why don't you come play for me at Weber State? And I was like, for real? He said, yeah, come play at Weber State. Now, he had no reason. I'm not making his Weber State team significantly better, right? But he saw that I was down in the dumps. I'm some 22-year-old kid whose life dream has not panned out. And the reason we are in the same spot in a backyard in Holiday, Utah, is because a guy who had played for him 16 years earlier invited him to the wedding. And Coach Mack is the type of guy that says, yeah, I was a father figure for you. I was a mentor figure for you. I'm showing up at your wedding, even a decade plus removed from you being a part of my team. That's why he was there. So that's why Coach Mack he deserves this spot. Not only because he was a great football coach for his time at the University of Utah, not only because he resurrected this program from the dumps and laid the foundation for what Utah football became under Urban Meyer and Kyle Whittingham, but because he cares deeply about his players in a way that I don't even think is possible in college football anymore. It's not an indictment against Kyle Whittingham or Kalani Sitake because they do a pretty darn good job of it. It's just the world is so different now. When Ron McBride was fired, go back and look up the archive footage. When Ron McBride was fired after that 2002 season, there were like, I think it was Tavita Kemoyatu, I can't remember which Kemoyatu was weeping on air on a camera interview with the news, was crying like not just like a tear tracing down, was like, you can't do this to Coach. What he has done for me, what he has done for us, you can't do this to him. This big old 300-pound scary monster of a man is breaking down because the guy that helped make his life successful has been fired. That's the connection he had with his players and has with his players. I played for him for 1 year. And Coach Mack is a serious mentor in my life, and every single time I see him, we have a good conversation. We have a big hug. I tell him I love him. He says the same thing. He has no reason to even give a bleep about me, but I genuinely feel like he does. So imagine what it's like for the guy, for like the Luther Ellises of the world, for the guys that helped him lay this foundation, that were important players on his team, that he was with for multiple years. He's just the man. And he goes up in the Ring of Honor this year, September 6th, Cal Poly game. Get your butts in your seats and scream your heads off to show this man the appreciation, because Utah football would not be where it is at today if not for Ron McBride's time in the 90s in Utah football. I can definitively say that. Urban Meyer never happens. Kyle Whittingham's undefeated season never happens. The Pac-12 thing, this whole trajectory does not happen if Ron McBride doesn't start building that foundation. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. We'll take a quick one here. We'll come back. We'll start hour 2, about 10 minutes late, with Adrian Denny on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
We've had surgeries where we've drafted Maverick Lamoureux, but we knew what was going on, and our doctors were good with it. So I think you have to go through the process, but with Mr. Denoyer, we'll certainly, I believe we have done our process, and we'll let you know how that one works out.
Bill Armstrong there, Utah Mammoth GM, pre-draft. Obviously, they were able to zero in on some picks they liked. Caleb Desnoyers taken off the board by the Utah Mammoth at number 4. We're going to talk about that here in just a second with Adrian Denny for Behind the Glass segment. Before we get there, though, reminder, Maroon 5 is coming to the Delta Center October 25th. Spence Checketts giving away tickets this week on the drive. They're on sale as well. You can find details at ESPN700sports.com. Maroon 5, we're happy to announce it on Utah's #1 sports talk. All right, joining us on the show, brought to you by Angora and Aladdin Industries, Adrian Denny, Utah Mammoth radio studio host over at SEG, at 801 Adrian Denny on your social medias. Adrian, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you, sir?
Hey, Sean. Great to talk to you. How are you doing, man?
Doing awesome. Before we get into any important hockey stuff, we're doing start, bench, cut for fireworks, all right? And entry-level fireworks, stuff for the kids. Start, bench, cut. Start one, bench one, cut one. Poppets, sparklers, smoke bombs. Who you starting, who you benching, who you cutting?
I like it. I like it. All right, so tell me my 3 options again so I don't screw them up, because I know exactly what I'm going to do.
Poppets, the little white things you throw and they burst, okay?
Yep.
Sparklers, your decision whether they're wood stick or the hot metal stick, and the smoke bomb, multicolored, little fuse, big plume of colored smoke?
Let's totally get rid of the smoke bombs.
Okay.
I'm fine with the poppets, and let's live a little, man. It's 4th of July in Utah. We got to have sparklers.
All right, so starting sparkler, benching poppet, cutting smoke bomb. All right, I like it.
Yes.
I don't hate it. Okay, let's get to the hockey now. Caleb Desnoyers at number 4. He said that his goal is to surprise everyone and make the team this year. He wants to be an NHL player at 18. Let's talk about how realistic that possibility is.
Bill Armstrong told us on Sunday, we're never going to do anything to squash a guy's dreams. We'd love nothing more than for him to come out and make the team. So he's a talent. He's just turned 18. Will he be on the roster opening night for Utah? He'll have his chance. He'll be there in training camp. Would it be expected right now? I'd probably say we have some work to do the next 2-3 months, but they drafted him to be a talent, to be a huge part of this team moving forward. And I don't think there's anything more that Bill Armstrong loved than Caleb coming at his introductory press conference in Salt Lake saying, yeah, I want to play in the NHL now. I want to play in the NHL this year.
Do you expect this team to be aggressive as free agency opens? About $18 million in cap space, but Bill Armstrong cautioned people who are maybe hoping that all that would be spent now. What are they going to do in free agency? They just announced Brandon Tanev's coming from Winnipeg.
Right, that's been reported. It's not the deepest free agent crop ever, right? And the cap went up, so everybody's got money. So what we've seen is with the cap going up and kind of a just okay free agent crop is a lot of teams have re-signed their guys, and so today's been kind of sleepy. The report out there right now, the player that you mentioned on his way to Utah, I think that's kind of what I expected Bill to go out and get to fill a spot on the team. And I look back at last year when he signed Ian Cole and Kevin Stenlund, and those were veteran guys that came in and helped with leadership for the third youngest team in the NHL. And now you're looking at a player that's played over 550 regular season games, almost 60 playoff games at a term of 3 years and a price that doesn't compromise anything in the future. So I think it's kind of what I expected. I'm not sure I had any names in mind, but this is kind of the piece that I expected Utah to add. Just a complementary option to add to a team that is on the verge of making the playoffs. We said it last week with James and Brian, like they were in it till the final week, and they're going to be players like Dylan Guenther going from year 2 to year 3, and Logan Cooley, same thing. So I think this is it's a good veteran piece to add without just sitting pat and without going crazy and overspending because your cap went up and you have cap space, but there's not really anything to burn your cap space on unless you just want to hold a press conference to say you did it.
Does JJ Peterka get them over the hump and make them a playoff team? I mean, obviously, it's not only his responsibility, but that is a big addition that they made in a trade last week. Is that a significant enough move that it could be the catalyst for maybe making you a playoff team in 2025, 2026?
Going into the offseason and going into free agency, Bill Armstrong has said really, if you ask him, what do you want to add to this team? What do you need? What are you looking at? And scoring is really the first thing he said. And Peterka is the guy that scored 20 plus goals 2 years in a row. And Sean, I got to tell you, man, like we don't see a lot of Buffalo Sabres hockey because all their games start at 5 p.m, and they haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. And usually when you're home and you have a night to watch hockey, TNT, ESPN, the Buffalo Sabres aren't involved. And with us being in the Western Conference, we play them twice a year. So haven't seen a lot of Buffalo Sabres. Didn't see a lot of JJ Peterka. I knew he scored a couple goals against us. I knew he was a player that wasn't especially crazy about returning to Buffalo. So I knew his stat line and knew he scored a couple of goals against us. I did it again last night, Sean. I watched all 22 goals that he scored last year, and I'm just drooling over this guy. The way he gets his shot off, Bill Armstrong called it a laser beam. He's got speed. He's got skill. I think it's a huge addition. And it was, as we look at this free agent crop right now, a brilliant move by Bill Armstrong in Utah to go out and get JJ Peterka via trade, because there's just nobody out there right now from a free agent standpoint that would fill that void. Sign him to a 5-year contract. He's 23 years old, so he's going to come in and be part of this group and their big picture, along with Gunther, who's 22, Cooley, who's 21, Sergachev and Keller just a shade over 26 and 27. So adding him with his offense, with his age, and getting that piece, I think that's really big. And it was the first year with an NHL team, and so we went the whole first year without trading any players. Everybody that was in training camp was on the roster at the end of the season, so fans really got attached to this team. And Josh Stone and Michael Kesselring were two guys he got attached to, and they're two really good players. But to take those two pieces and use them to get JJ Peterka, just a huge trade, and totally love it, and think it's going to be a really big part of the success this year for the Mammoth.
Adrian Denny is my guest here, a little behind the glass segment talking Utah Mammoth hockey on the Sean O'Connell Show. So development camp in Park City. Fans can watch today, and then they're going to close it down a little bit. But everyone got excited to see Desnoyers on the ice. I was like, wait, Ginla is skating, and he's not full contact yet, but 2 hip replacements at that age, and he's already back on the ice. And to my uneducated eye, it looked like he was moving pretty well. So that's exciting. Let's talk about timelines for someone like him. Obviously, you drafted him. I think he was still 17 when they drafted him last year, if I'm not mistaken. And he's got plenty of growth left. He's got the famous name, but that doesn't necessarily mean it makes him ready any earlier. And now the injury situation or the surgery situation could potentially delay that. But when do you expect to see Ginla really pressing for a spot on this NHL roster?
I'd say we're probably a year away. But you talked about the injuries that he's gone through, and to be that age, and holy cow, he's had some bad luck, but he's here, he's skating, he looks really, really good. And you talk about some of the things we're looking for on this roster, right? Scoring, size, and looking for a couple of things for this year. As I watch this development camp here, Sean, these guys are tall, they're big, and there's a lot of skill. So this pipeline with Ginla and Kobo Duane, who was drafted last year in the first round, and Daniil Boot is a guy that we could see in the NHL this year, and probably expect to a first round pick in 2023. He was drafted 12th overall. He's 6'6". He's a forward. He can get to the net. You talk about adding scoring, adding size to this roster. That's a guy that's on the ice right now at a development camp that could be with us in the NHL next year. And Dmitry Simashev's another guy on the ice up here in Park City right now that is going to be in the NHL, if not close to it, probably full-time by mid-season, if for some reason he's on the opening night roster, but taken 6 overall in 2023, another big D that's going to add size. It's just more from your pipeline and less you have to worry about with free agency and trades.
So more of a big picture question here with the NHL at large, and we just saw the Florida Panthers win their second straight cup, and they've been in it 3 years in a row. And And then, there was questions about what their roster was going to look like heading into this year. If, Bennett was going to move on, if they were going to keep the rat, Brad Marchand. And it looks like the same dang Florida Panthers team is coming back to three-peat next year. Is that a realistic possibility for them, given what we've seen develop in the last week or so?
You know what I didn't think was realistic was them bringing all three of those guys back. It never happens. You look at Colorado 3 years ago. You look at Vegas 2 years ago. You can never bring back all your guys. Florida last year didn't bring back their whole team and came back and won the Stanley Cup. But everybody made some compromises, and cap went up a little bit, and they got him back. And gosh, you got to go back 35, 40 years the last time somebody three-peated in the NHL. But holy smokes, what Florida just did. I'm glad they're in the Eastern Conference.
Western Conference, the early odds right after the day after Florida won, Vegas said, and by the way, it's adjusted now that Florida brought everyone back, but Vegas immediately the next day said Edmonton has the best odds to win the Cup next year. And I don't know if I believe that, given the inconsistency in goal and the fact that Connor McDavid seems to be less committal to being a full career guy in Edmonton. What do you think is going to happen with the Oilers and specifically with McDavid? Because for all these years, he's been like, no, I want to do it here. And now he's backed off on that, even just with unstated or not less committal answers. Does he end up staying in Edmonton?
Do you know what the popular opinion right now for him is among some of the experts in the NHL is kind of exactly what you just said, Sean, and that is non-committal. And maybe he signs a shorter term deal than the 8-year contract that he's eligible for right now, right? Maybe he signs a 3-year, 4-year contract, kind of non-committal, just to see how it plays out. Like I look at that Edmonton team, and they've got Draisaitl and McDavid locked up, and they just keep it's kind of a paper mache roster. They just keep piecing stuff onto it, and it looks like they just lost Corey Perry to the Los Angeles Kings, so that's a big void. They've talked about goaltending. Their own general manager said even with two goaltenders under contract that they want to address their goaltending. There's not much there, and then yesterday there was a report that said, well, maybe they're not going to just address goaltending right now. Maybe they'll wait again until mid-season. So, gosh, I mean, for me right now, I'm an expert, so I'll say, well, Mitch Marner going to Vegas. Like, how do you not take them and say they're the favorites in the Western Conference right now? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what McDavid does. But I think the popular opinion is a non-committal 3-year, 4-year deal is might be what happens to start with here.
The gap between where Utah Mammoth are at and Western Conference Finals participants, how big is it? How many years is it going to take for this team to close that gap?
They know the window for the championship run isn't going to start next year. You can make the playoffs. You usually don't win the Stanley Cup the first time you make the playoffs. And you see how teams, learn and grow from year to year. How many times of Colorado losing in the first round, second round did it take them to get that Stanley Cup? Florida lost in the finals 2 years ago to Vegas before coming back to win those back-to-backs. Tampa got swept in the first round in 2019 after having the best record in the NHL and winning the President's Cup trophy. They had a hard lesson right there before coming back and winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. But Sean, what did I tell you just a second ago about Florida bringing back all their guys? Well, they didn't bring back all of them. because we've got some breaking news here. Utah has signed Stanley Cup champion Nate Schmidt to a 3-year contract.
Oh, hey,
was a guy that right here, man.
Love
That is a guy. He went to Florida on a prove-it deal this year from Winnipeg. Had a really good year, a really good playoff, and they couldn't sign everybody. And welcome to Utah, Nate Schmidt, 3-year deal, man.
Okay, so clearly with some of these acquisitions, obviously young talent's important, but this was the case with Sergachev. They're adding guys who have been there before. What kind of a difference does somebody like that make in the dressing room when it's a guy who knows everything that it takes? He's been on Stanley Cup teams, has hoisted the cup, and these young guys get to learn from them. And like, how much of a difference can it make for this team?
Nobody puts a bigger emphasis on signing Stanley Cup champions than Bill Armstrong. Sean, this is insane. So you just signed Nate Schmidt. Last summer, they signed Kevin Stenlund, who had just come off of winning a Stanley Cup championship with Florida. They also signed Ian Cole last summer and re-signed him to an extension middle of the season this year. 2 Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh. Last year, mid-season, acquired Oli Mata from Detroit. He got a 3-year extension in March. He's got 2 Stanley Cup championships. Like, you can go down the list with Stanley Cup champions on this team. Last year we had Robert Bortuzzo, signed him late in September, but I think we had 7 Stanley Cup rings in our dressing room on last year's team, and Bill will love to tell you about all the Stanley Cup champions that he signed to come in and be part of the locker room and help this young team grow along.
Pretty incredible stuff. We'll keep a close eye on it the rest of the way as NHL free agency opens today, and already some big moves by the Utah Mammoth. Adrian, appreciate your time and glad you're going to be part of the show moving forward. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm excited, Sean. Thanks for having me, and can't wait to be back in studio with you, buddy.
Adrian Denny, Behind the Glass, brought to you by Angora and Aladdin Industries, Utah Mammoth radio studio host and friend of the program now, at 801 Adrian Denny. Go give him a follow on socials for all your Utah Mammoth news, thoughts, etc. All right, it's Summertime Radio, and we're getting a lot of lists. Utes popping up on those lists. I'll tell you who. I'll tell you where. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Live Night Events presenting the 2025 Granary Live Concert Series powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Experience outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City's Granary District. Details are available at ESPN700sports.com. James, are you a give me the good news first or the bad news first kind of guy?
Let's get the bad news out of the way. Let's feel good. Let's leave the conversation feeling good. That's how I
All right.
see it.
So ESPN right now has its list season, okay? Every part of the year is list season for me. But for the average person, the 2026 NFL Draft, ranking the top 5 prospects at every position, okay? And 2 writers combined on this one. Matt Miller and Jordan Reed have combined to scout out the best top 5 players at each position for the upcoming NFL Draft. And, of course, I peruse this, and I'm looking for Utah names primarily and then Big 12 names, et cetera. And the bad news is that at defensive tackle, there are no Utes. There is one BYU Cougar who happened to be a Ute before. Keanu Tanuvasa is on this list for Matt Miller as the 3rd best defensive tackle in the country next year. So just, sucks to see that on somebody else's team when you're the squad that developed him. Also, Lee Hunter at Texas Tech is on that same list. Jordan Reed doesn't give any love to any Big 12 players. It's all Clemson. It's Clemson and then a bunch of SEC guys, according to him. The minor surprise, potentially, and something I'm happy to see as they go through their safety rankings, like Caleb Downs at Ohio State is one of the best overall players in all of college football this year. So he's the #1 on both. Kamari Ramsey at USC, everyone thinks very, very highly of him. Dylan Thieneman at Oregon, the transfer student. Like, these guys are going to appear on every list, okay? But look who pops on to Jordan Reed's top 5. Teo Johnson from the University of Utah.
Okay, Jordan Reed.
And what did we talk about with Teo Johnson last year? Who was it that said he's going to be the next guy? He's going to be the next Rojo. He's going to be the next Weddle. He's going to be the next Marcus Williams. Teo Johnson getting a little bit of national love. And the reason I like this, I especially like this, is because it's often when you're doing this, you're talking about top 5 prospects, there's a regurgitation. There's a confirmation bias, right? You've evaluated someone, you think that they're really good. You don't want to go out there and be like, oh, I'm the one who's going to put him on the list when no one else is talking about him. That's what Jordan Reed is doing here. And you really have to over-index. You really have to truly have impressed someone for them to take this risk. Minor risk, of course, because even if he's dead wrong about all these players, it doesn't really affect much. But I think you get the point. Rankings and things like that are oftentimes just everyone patting each other on the back and be like, yes, I also agree about this one particular player. And look, sometimes it's just undeniable. There are guys like the Travis Hunters of the world, whether you rooted for him or you hated him or whatever, you just had to agree that's a really, really good player. That's somebody that is, I've told you before, Mason Graham, the former Michigan Wolverine, I think he's going to be a draft bust. But undeniably, he's a good player in college football. So Teo's not in that realm yet. But somebody ranking him in the top 5 is someone who watched some Utah film and saw his closing speed, saw the instincts, probably did a little bit of back research and realized that there was some positional swapping and that he didn't really get to throw himself into a full rhythm the same way some of these other guys have been playing the same position in the same scheme for 3 years before they make an appearance on this list. So Teo Johnson popping up as a top 5 safety in all of college football. Fun to see, and beyond being fun to see, when you look at these lists, if it actually plays out that way, do you know how massive that is for Utah football? If you end up having a guy, if you end up having a single guy on your team who's top 5 at any given position, That is huge for your team. If you end up having multiple guys that are top 5 nationally at their position, and those guys stay healthy, you're talking about adding wins in the win column here. So Teo Johnson, love to see that. Other names appearing that you're going to have to pay attention to at corner. DJ McKinney at the University of Colorado. Utah's going to see them, obviously. Considered a top 5 player, at least by Jordan Reed. Safety, there's only Teo on the safety list. No Oregon, no USC, no Ohio State, no Texas, no Michigan. That's where all the other players come from, at least none on the Utah schedule, I should say. The Big 12, as is going to be the case, not getting a lot of love, no linebackers. And that's one where I want to be careful about this because, James, be honest with me, how annoying did it get for you last year to hear me say Lander Barton's name every single day all summer long, being like, you don't realize how good this kid's going to be. Like, and it didn't play out that way. He ended up, the last 4 or 5 games of the year, he ended up rounding back into physical form and getting comfortable, I think, with his own.
When Karene coming back and taking the headset from him seemed to help him play looser too.
Yeah. But it took some time for him to really, and so he ended up being like not even a first team all conference level player because he played well below my expectation last year. And then during the season, I was having conversations with people like, hey, what is wrong with him? And a lot of people were like, what do you mean what's wrong with him, dude? He came off a catastrophic injury and had surgery and had to learn how to trust his body again. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that matters.
Yeah, but that's just easy to do, right? So when you're that talented, it's just easy to do.
Well, yeah.
We totally take that for granted here because we don't see the day in, day out struggle. Many of us in the media have not gone through injuries like that before, so we absolutely do not give that enough gravity as to why a player looks like he's not as up to snuff as he was pre-injury. And that clearly hampered him. I mean, it's a callback to when you've admitted that you were probably too overcritical of Van Fillinger a couple years
100%.
ago for the same kind of reason. But in neither instance did you know that it was injury, playing injured, or coming off, or being a tougher recovery than any of us realized.
Yeah,
was the reason why was the reason for the little bit of a struggle
as
on
an
the
observer field. you don't account for that as often as you should, probably, where you're just like, oh,
which
yeah,
is probably every time we should be accounting for, like, oh, if he doesn't look right,
it means
it's
he's
probably
not right.
because he's either playing in with an injury that has not been disclosed, or it's the injury he had the year before and he's still just a little rusty.
It's more likely, far more likely, that this person is dealing with something physically than they forgot how to be a good football player, but we screw that up.
Absolutely. And I think we did last year. You definitely were campaigning for him to get the postseason love that he did not get preseason last year, unfortunately, for those reasons we laid out. It was just not in the cards for Lander last year, but you have to think that now being 2 years removed from that major injury, season-ending injury he suffered in the final Pac-12 season, you have to think that he's poised for a strong bounce-back year, just like the team is.
And
like,
honestly,
it's a bounce-back year for it. It looks like it's going to be a bounce-back year for Lander Barton, and everyone among Utes fans are hoping for a bounce-back year for the entire team.
This team, by the way, at the linebacker position specifically, and there's no Utes on the top 5 linebackers. Like, Lander is an NFL player if Lander's healthy and confident, period. It's the end of story. I think Levani Damuni is as well. We'll see what Jonnu ends up being. You have some depth at linebacker, but you need that linebacking core to stay healthy. And Lander's a guy that I could see flying under the radar now, which is odd, but from a national standpoint, certainly, and even from a Big 12 standpoint, might be flying under the radar because it took him some time last year to round into form. That's a guy who I honestly don't know if he's going to appear on, like, the preseason all Big 12 lists either. I don't know if he's going to get a lot of love there. Now, Kyle Whittingham has a certain level of influence, and Morgan Scalley have a certain level of influence among their coaching peers. So if those guys are going around and just being like, Lander Barton's really dang good, then maybe some other coaches are like, well, if he says that, I'll put him as an honorable mention. I'll put him as the second-team guy. But also the dynamics now are different to where coaches aren't doing that. They're not pounding their chest about their players anymore because, Lander, you don't have to worry about it. But, like, players can move. Players can transfer. Players can do whatever else. So, anyway, I got sidetracked on Lander Barton. The top 5 list, and this is really – I worked from bottom to top in as far as bad news to good news here.
Okay.
Matt Miller and Jordan Reed making this list, which, of course, only means as much as the words, the time you take to read it. Miller's top 5 offensive tackles. Francis Mauigoa from Miami, Caden Proctor from Alabama, Austin Barber from Florida, Spencer Fano, Utah, Caleb Lomu, Utah.
Oh,
Two top 5 guys.
But Lomu ahead of Fano.
No. Fano 4.
Oh,
Lomu
okay.
5.
Oh, you did it backwards. So 4 and 5.
Reed,
So, yeah, okay.
Jordan Reed's top 5. Number 1 tackle in the country, according to Jordan Reed, Spencer Fano, University of Utah. He's got Caden Proctor from Alabama, number 2. Isaiah World from Oregon. He's a transfer into Oregon, number 3. Caleb Lomu, 4. Drew Shelton from Penn State, 5. Bill Riley and I talked about this earlier on the show. If these two play top 5 in the country level offensive tackle football, if they play at the same time, if they're both on the field at the same time and they're playing top 10, if they're both top 25 offensive tackles in college football this year, are we – Devin Dampier, I'm taking the over-under on sacks, 3.5. I'm setting the over-under for Devin Dampier. If both of these guys are healthy, Devin Dampier's sacks on the year, I'm setting at 3.5 if both of those guys are healthy.
What was the number with New Mexico?
4.
It was 4, yeah.
Playing for a team that had bad offensive tackles.
Yeah, now, I like the 3.5 number because you also have to account for a step up in competition.
Step up in competition, certainly. Some difference in scheme and what they're going to do, slight differences.
So if he takes 4 sacks again this year, that seems pretty realistic. So I like the number at 3.5. Like, that's crazy though. In a Power 4 conference.
I would love to. I want to get like an actual Vegas odds maker on. And be like, I want to set a season sacks taken number at 3.5. He'd be like, oh, for a backup quarterback? No.
No.
For the every down starter.
For the sickos that want to bet on backup quarterbacks?
I'd be like, absolutely not. We're not putting that number out there. But you can really build a case. If these two, you know what? I'm going above and beyond. I'm setting the total sacks that Devin Dampier is going to take if these two guys stay healthy at 0.5 for the year.
0.5.
He's going to get sacked either 0 times or 1 time. You decide.
Wow.
You're taking the over, the under. No, I mean, I'm obviously exaggerating here, but this is the new
Lee
Lander
Sterling,
Barton.
are you listening?
This is the new Lander Barton topic on the Sean O'Connell Show for the summer, okay? I told you last year Lander Barton is an All-American caliber linebacker and that everyone was sleeping on him. And they were right to sleep on him because they were probably factoring in the injury history and things like that.
But it was also fair of you to say at that time because you were basing that off of his trajectory when he was playing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Now, if this plays out even close to the level of optimism that, again, not I'm wearing red goggles, all I care about is Utah football, I'm the biggest homer in the world, that kind of optimism and prognostication. I'm talking about national writers whose entire list, by the way, at every position is indexing to the SEC and to the Big Ten because that's where college football is run these days. These guys know it. The best players in college football, for the most part, are in those two conferences right now. The national champion this year is going to emerge from one of those two conferences. These two guys, and it's not just the two of them. There's a dozen or more expert, like actually well-informed writers that have similar opinions, are saying you've got on one roster at the University of Utah, coached by a guy who knows what he's doing and has developed first-round NFL talent before, you've got two of these guys bookending an offensive line that doesn't have the liability of like a freshman center either. It's experienced guys. And I just saw yesterday, Tainoa Tongiai is like one of the top 10 returning Pro Football Focus graded guards in the country.
Yeah, to what Bill said too, you wanted to talk about the love that the tackles are getting, and Bill said, hey, hold on. The interior offensive linemen are also really, really good.
Dude, if the prognostications, if the predictions, if the optimism is even close to correct on this Utah football offensive line, you don't even need to be a good running back. You just need to not suck to get 4 yards of carry. You don't even need to be a hyper elusive, situationally aware quarterback. You just need to be a guy that gets the ball out of his hands in less than 5 seconds. If what we are being told by well-informed individuals is even remotely in the ballpark of being accurate on Utah football's offensive line, this is the best offensive line in Utah football history.
And one of the best offensive line units in the country, if that's the case.
I mean, are we going to see Joe Moore Award to the University of Utah? Is Jeff Schwartz going to have to fly out here with a 300-pound bronze trophy and present this thing to Jim Harding?
Let's at least say that if anything is close to what the so far the preseason predictions are, they're going to be in the running,
James,
at the very least.
I need you to get a sharp object, and I need you to come in here right now, and I need you to burst my bubble on this Utah offensive line, because now I'm drinking the Kool-Aid so aggressively. Do we realize collectively as a Utah fan base what it means if a Utah football team, if a Kyle Whittingham coached Utah football team has one of the top 10 offensive lines in the entire country? All of those things, all those criticisms that you've been throwing as like a fan of, you got to adapt to modern football, you got to air it out more, you got to do all this stuff. All those things, you suddenly go, you don't have to do any of that because you can just run the offense you want. Your offensive line is potentially that good. And this will be my last point. Raise your hand if you know who the best defensive line in the Big 12 Conference is going to be. Well, it's likely Texas Tech or BYU. Texas Tech and BYU have a player apiece that is being projected as a potential All-American, right? If you've got 2, maybe 3 on your offensive line and they got 1 potentially on their defensive line, you still win that battle at the line of scrimmage. James, burst my bubble now. I don't want to deal with the pain.
You don't want the letdown.
I don't want to deal with the pain if I'm wrong about this.
I don't think I could burst it at this moment. I think we have to wait till at least till fall camp and we start to get more opinions as people start to see get their eyes on guys at least practicing together and getting ready for the season. And we may not be able to burst that bubble at all this year. Hopefully that's the case, and it may not be, if it is going to happen, it may not be till games have already started, OC. So I'm going to let you ride on this cloud 9 that you're on.
All right, before we take a break, the top 5 quarterbacks according to these ESPN pundits: Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, Fernando Mendoza, the Cal transfer, now at Indiana, Lenore Sellers at South Carolina, Drew Aller at Penn State. They both have the same list. They've just shuffled the rankings a little bit. Are you on board with those 5 as the top 5?
As of right now, yeah. If I look at them, if I look at it a little closely, maybe I would quibble with 1 or 2. But as of right now, on the spot, I don't know if I have too many problems with that.
Devin Dampier to the moon, ladies and gentlemen, because he's not going to be touched ever behind this offensive line. He'll be on the list at the end of the year. Woo, baby, drinking that red Kool-Aid on your home of the Utes. Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. You've heard me talking about the new partnership we have at ESPN 700 with our friends at the Steel Vault, thesteelvault.com. That's steel with an E at the end of steel. 801-878-9976 to book a consultation. Go in. And all of us have different insecurities, right? For some of us, it's the lowering of testosterone as we age. Maybe adds a little weight around the middle. Maybe you're getting a little soft, a little puffy. Maybe it's the hairline that's creeping back. Maybe things in the bedroom aren't where you want them to be. Steel Vault can address all of those things with you. And maybe it's not anything related to your testosterone. Maybe you're just like dealing with soreness, lack of sleep. You're having a hard time optimizing your physical health. This is the time of year where you want to be feeling your best. Hikes, swimming, activities with the family, getting outdoors and enjoying this beautiful state we've got. Well, get your body right with maybe some red light therapy. I went to the Steel Vault a couple weekends ago, laid down in that red light therapy bed, and I was like, all right, I'm a skeptic on some of these things. I'll be honest. I felt phenomenal after this, improving the circulation, improving the flexibility, helping your body heal deep and internal stuff. Go check it out at the Steel Vault. And when you do, mention the Sean O'Connell Show. They're going to give you 20% off whatever treatment you book. 801-878-9976. Tell them OC sent you. They will take care of you at the Steel Vault. You can also click the big Book Now button at thesteelvault.com. That's STEELE. STEELE. Vault.com. All right. James, I'm going to keep this one quick because we got Tony Jones coming on the other side. Your Ohio State Buckeyes been very chatty this offseason. All right? How do you feel about Jeremiah Smith making a promise that he will never lose to Michigan again? A public promise. These things don't work out all that often in sports, and college sports or pro sports now, but when people make a stated vow, I'm never losing to this team again, it's never going to happen. Probably the most famous is Tim Tebow. How do you feel about it? Your guy, your big-time star, your $4 million a year wide receiver,
Heisman favorite,
making
wide
a
receiver too,
making a claim like that.
See, like,
you don't believe him. I can tell.
I'm okay with it because you're coming off the national championship. I'm okay with it right now because you're feeling good because even though lost to that team that I don't even want
to
the team up
team.
north,
Okay,
as they say in that part of the country, as they lost to that team over there a number of years in a row now, unfortunately. You're coming off the national championship, so now's the time to talk your talk. He's a Heisman favorite going into this season. He was outstanding as a freshman. So I'm okay with it right now. Does it make me nervous? Come and probably make me even more nervous come November, come Thanksgiving weekend when these two teams clash in the game again? Yeah, absolutely, because like you just talked about, wanting me to burst your bubble because you're feeling a little bit too you're feeling so optimistic about the Utah offensive line that it's making you nervous. What happens if they're not as good as everyone thinks they might be at this time or right now? That disappointment sucks. So yeah, will it make me more nervous come Thanksgiving? Yes, they have to beat them this year. They have to end the streak. That being said, right now, talk your talk. You won the national championship. A lot of guys are returning, including Jeremiah Smith, who's talking like this. Caleb Downs, one of the best defensive players in the country. You should feel that way. So go ahead and talk.
all right, okay. Sometimes your mouth writes checks that your you-know-what can't cash, but the thing is with Jeremiah Smith, I say it all tongue-in-cheek, Ohio State is an absolute machine. He himself, as an individual, is not of this world athletically, scheme-wise. Like, he's just a perfect wide receiver. And the biggest flex here is that when he makes this promise, he says, I'm never going to lose to Michigan in these next 2 years, because he knows that he doesn't have to stay 4 years to play in the NFL.
Right. He's like, I have 3 years of eligibility left.
It's a 2-year promise.
But I've got 2 more. I only have to promise 2 years.
It's a 2-year promise because he knows he's a first-round draft pick already. As a freshman, he's just like, I could go now, and someone would draft me, which is true.
He's that good, man. Like, I know it's preposterous for me to have said he's a Heisman favorite, but he is. In the betting odds, he's one of the Heisman favorites, and he hasn't even played a game in his sophomore year yet. Like, he's just stupid good.
Yeah, some people are just – and he's not the only rising sophomore wide receiver who's thought of in that vein.
No.
The Williams kid.
Yeah, Ryan Williams
from Alabama. Same.
He was getting even more shine than Jeremiah Smith in September of last year because he was making just ridiculous catches.
And he was 17.
But then, Jeremiah Smith surpassed him because the team Ohio State ended up being much better than Alabama. But yeah, like two sophomore receivers who have a shot at the Heisman this year was what we're saying right now in July. Like that, I don't know many years we've been able to say that in the history of college football.
You know what would be fun is if the NFL instituted a new rule around the draft where the teams vote on someone that they would like to be able to draft before the eligibility rules come into play. Where if you can get a majority...
You have to get enough votes.
You have to get at least 50%. Well, I guess...
Maybe like 70% of the votes, like
thing
what they
is, though-
have when they pass new rules in a lot of leagues and the board of governors.
But you would have to hold the vote before NFL teams have figured out the pecking order of the draft.
That's true.
Because if you were like, I don't know, you're in the same division as a team who's going to have the number 2 or 3 or 1 pick, you don't want them to be able to draft a guy that's going to make them better soon, right? So you would manipulate your vote. But like, let's say at the end of each year, at the end of each college football season, the NFL has to go immediately into a room together and they say, all right, this guy's going to be a sophomore next year. This guy's going to be a junior next year. This guy's going to be a redshirt freshman next year. And we think he's so good that we want him to be draft eligible before the 3-year statute of limitations. That would be fun.
It would be fun.
You get a player who's exempt from it, 1 player per year who's exempt from it, and you just see where he ends up falling in the draft because you're not necessarily going to be the number 1 overall pick.
Call it the Maurice Claret rule, just because all the noise he made about I'm challenging the NFL, I'm challenging the rule.
Who there was Leonard Fournette. Remember Leonard Fournette? They talked about him just sitting out his final year of college eligibility, just being like, he was so good these last 2 years, he doesn't need to play as a junior. Just let him sit.
Mike Williams, USC, way back in the day, another guy that, like Maurice Claret, that was like, we're challenging the rule, we're going to come out as freshmen.
Nick Bosa effectively did that.
That's true. He, instead of rehabbing to get back on the field that 2018 season, he just said, I'm going to rehab to get ready for the draft. In September, he said that.
Yeah.
That was wild.
He played, 2 games or 3 games?
He played the first 3 games. I think he got injured in the 3rd game. So it was like 2.5 games. And then he just said, thank you, Ohio State.
Yeah, thank you for
I'm going to rehab, but I will not play for you again.
And by the way, this is pre-NIL, right? So
yeah,
he didn't stick around, or he didn't like.
This was Urban Meyer's final year, but it was in the first 3 games. And Ryan Day was acting head coach because Urban Meyer got suspended because of the Zach Smith stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was like 3 years before NIL.
So like, look, the NFL. There's been a couple of guys now. Who's the Stanford guy that got the Stanford offensive lineman? Walker Little. Walker Little did not play for 2 years, and still got drafted in the first round. The NFL will be like, yeah, we'll take a flyer on this guy because of his talent alone. You know what? I'm going to go to the NFL owner meetings next time, James, and I'm going to propose this. They'll listen to me, right? It's just some random lunatic wandering in off the street.
Absolutely.
You know what? Here's a better way to do it.
Why not?
Here's a better way to do it. I'm going to give this idea to Jerry Jones when we're down at Big 12 Media Days. Be like, Jerry, you could say this is your idea. I don't care.
Just whisper it to everyone that happens to be in they have a Cowboys logo on their shirt, and be like, hey, tell Jerry this for me.
Hey, Jerry. I'm going to get an invite to Jerry Jones' stadium-shaped hot tub, and I'm going to tell him while we're having a soak in there that he's got to propose this rule. That's what we're doing.
To his NFL draft war room yacht
Yes.
from the 2020 draft. Yeah.
All right. Way over time again. We got to take a quick one, and we're going to come back with Tony Jones, NBA free agency. My number 1 question for Tony Jones is something that James gave me this morning. How do you get Dame Lillard into a Utah Jazz uniform now that he's been waived by the Milwaukee Bucks? Maybe Tony has an answer. It's Utah's number 1 sports talk, the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Hour 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show begins with Tony Jones, Utah Jazz, Denver Nuggets, NBA insider over at The Athletic, friend of the program. Tony, welcome. How are you, sir?
I am good. Good. Thanks for bringing me on the piano, man.
We're going to do some start, bench, cut with introductory fireworks. Are you ready for this? Start one.
I am ready.
Bench one, cut one. Poppets, sparklers, smoke bombs. Who you starting, who you benching, who you cutting?
You're starting smoke bombs. Then you are. What are the other two?
The poppets, the little things, the little white things you throw.
Yes.
And then sparklers.
Okay. Oh, sparklers. Bench sparklers and cut the poppets.
Well, Tony Jones is cutting poppets. This is
yeah. We're cutting poppets.
All right. Tony's cutting poppets. He doesn't like.
We're starting smoke bombs because I just want to scare my dog.
All right.
Is that mean of me?
A little bit, but whatever works. You know what I mean? The 4th of July is already scary enough for dogs, but that's fine. How do we get Dame Lillard into a Utah Jazz uniform now that the Bucks have moved on?
Oh, come on, you don't.
Tony, please.
No way.
Tony, come on. Worth it just for the jersey sales.
Why would the Jazz do that, and why would Dame do that? That's you have, when you do player acquisitions or trades or whatever, you have to say, hey, why would this team do that? And you can usually find a reason why the Jazz would do it, but why would Dame do it? Because right now Dame gets to get paid $22 million for this year, and he'll get paid $22 million for the next 5 years. And he gets to get paid $22 million this year. He gets to go live in Miami, and then he gets to be a free agent and then go and freely pick his next destination, which I'm guessing is going to be a contender. So there's no reason for Dame to do it, and honestly, there's no reason for the Jazz to do it because if you're the Jazz, it doesn't make any sense for you to have Dame around this year because he doesn't want to be around. He wants to be in Miami. So, if you're the Jazz, the only reason you take it is for him to play, and you don't want him to play. Not on this team. You want Keontae, obviously this will be next year we're talking, but you want, Keontae George and Isaiah Collier and all the young guys to play. So, I mean, there's no reason for it to happen. I know that Dame wanted to one day play for the Jazz. I know that the Jazz in Dame's prime would have loved to have him on the team, and that could have probably put the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert team over the top, but it's just not in the cards.
Jordan Clarkson to New York. He's one of those guys, obviously big time fan favorite, and we kind of saw this coming that if you're going to tank again and you're going to do it the way that they're going to do it this year, Jordan Clarkson couldn't be part of this roster. So the buyout and then him to New York, is that going to work out for Jordan Clarkson to win at a higher level? And I know that you've got your Knicks allegiances, but does he help that team get better in any kind of significant way?
Yeah, they might have won a championship. The Knicks can win it next year. They're good enough on paper to win it. The only thing that was stopping them this year was a lack of depth, and they have that now. They have that starting five. Now you have Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench. Now with Deuce McBride, so now you have a starting caliber backcourt coming off the bench. They signed Gerson Yabusele, who was absolutely terrific in Philadelphia last year, and he becomes their first big off the bench. I mean, they have real quality depth right now, and right now, if I'm looking at the Eastern Conference, I'm looking at the Knicks, I'm looking at Cleveland, I'm looking at Orlando, I'm looking at Atlanta. Either one of those four can come out of the Eastern Conference And, you know, I give the Knicks as good a shot as any to come out of the East right now. And if they come out of the East, you're 4 wins away from an NBA championship. So Jordan Clarkson is going to be playing for a possible NBA title next year. So I'm happy for him in that sense. You know, he stayed with the Jazz for 3 years on a Jazz team that had no desire to win, and you know he never complained. He did what he was told. You know, when they asked him to sit out, he sat out. When they curtailed his minutes, he never complained. You know, and he's a competitor, and there were frustrating moments for him, and there were moments where plenty of moments where he obviously wanted to be elsewhere, but he has landed in almost as good a situation as you can land going to the Knicks. They have a legitimate chance to win a title next year.
Who's going to be his coach?
Mike Brown.
They're meeting with Mike Brown again. Is that a done deal?
I mean, I don't think it's a done deal, but I mean, it's trending that way. So, you know, it's do you like Mike?
I mean, Mike's been around so many different teams now and coached so many great players that I don't know if he's the reason for great or if he's the reason why, you know, great teams are held back. So I defer to you. Do you like Mike?
I like him. I don't know that I love him. You know, he obviously, I think he got a lot better. I think he got a lot better between Cleveland and having that stint at Golden State as an assistant. I think he learned how to coach offense at Golden State, and that really helped him. Then he went to Sacramento, and he had that Coach of the Year season. And then, you know, I think that, you know, things kind of went left from there. But, you know, he's going to do some things different than Tibbs that I think, you know, Tibbs got fired for it in terms of, you know, never using his depth. Mike's going to have some depth to use, and I think that, you know, he'll manage minutes a lot better, and he'll, you know, those guys will get a lot of shots up. They'll get a lot of threes up. The pace will increase. They're going to play an exciting brand of offense if it is indeed Mike Brown. So, you know, I think I like the hire. You know, I think that we'll take, you know, some shots at the Knicks when, you know, when and if the hire is made, because, you know, Tibbs and Mike Brown are probably in the same tier of coaches. So, you know, you didn't really hire a coach, you know, per se that's better than Tibbs, but he's better at some of the things that Tibbs that will really matter with this roster. And I think that'll help going forward.
SGA has signed his Supermax extension, 4 more years, $285 million. How many of those 4 years is Oklahoma City the team to beat in the West?
Maybe 0. Like I just don't. You know, I think a lot of people are seeing, you know, Oklahoma City and saying, "Oh my goodness, this is a dynasty," and I just don't see it that way. They could have and maybe should have gotten beaten twice during this championship run. Now, you got to give them a lot of credit. They won some games that they really, really needed to win. They made shots they needed to make. But, you know, let's go through this run, okay? The Denver Nuggets, who had 5 healthy players essentially, were up 2-1 at home at Ball Arena in that series, and they took a 9-point lead with 8 minutes to go. And because they only had 5 players and they couldn't really sub, they lost that lead. And if they win that game, they win the series because they're up 3-1. And that series goes 7, and the Nuggets run out of gas. And the Indiana Pacers were up 2-1 in that series. They were up double digits in Game 4. Blew that game. Got to give Oklahoma City credit for coming back. But if they win that game, they win the series. And then obviously Tyrese Halliburton goes down in Game 7, and you don't know what's going to happen. So I mean, Oklahoma City won, but there's not a gap between Oklahoma City and the rest of the league. They won the championship. They deserve the championship. But I mean, I don't look at Oklahoma City, as a team, that everybody's chasing. I think they're really good. I don't think they're that good. Houston is going to be on that tier next year. Denver's going to be on that tier next year because they fixed their depth problems emphatically. And I think Denver, not only have they fixed their depth problems, they've gotten a lot better because they replaced Michael Porter Jr. with Cam Johnson. And Cam Johnson's a lot better a basketball player than Michael Porter Jr. is. So, I mean, over the next 4 years, Oklahoma City's obviously going to be right there. But, they're not going to be a prohibitive favorite, at least next year, because, Denver and Houston definitely exist. And, I think that Cleveland's going to be really, really hungry to try to get some things done. I think that the Knicks, we just talked about them. I think they've joined the level of elite. I think we're going to have a really competitive season next year.
LeBron James, is this the first time LeBron's opted into a player option?
No, but it's the first time he's opted in, I believe, and not really extended it to a 1-and-1, which is roll over the player option, and then opt in to a 1 year, and then have a player option for the next year. It is the first time that he's not completely in control of his own destiny. So that's probably really interesting.
What does it mean for his timeline, for the Lakers, et cetera?
Well, if we look at LeBron in a vacuum, he's still one of the top 10 players in the league. He averaged 24, 8, and 8 last year, and he shot 40% from 3-point range. There were exactly 3 players in the NBA who had those numbers, 24, 8, and 8, and one of those guys is Nikola Jokic. He made second team All-NBA, so he had probably his best defensive season in about 6 or 7 years. So clearly he's still one of the best 10 players in the world. Where he's running into a little bit of issue right now is that he's 40 years old, and the Lakers are just they're prioritizing their future. Now, what LeBron has to figure out is, are the Lakers prioritizing their future while simultaneously trying to win a championship next year? And if the answer is no, and if LeBron wants to actually compete for a championship, then that's where the conundrum is. And that's where he's got to figure out whether he wants to stay with the Lakers, a Laker team that's clearly prioritizing 2027 instead of 2025, or if he wants to leave and try to go somewhere and win a championship. The problem with that is he has his son that he has to worry about, who I don't know is a good enough player individually to survive on his own at this point without his father on the roster. So there's a lot of stuff that LeBron is going to have to figure out. I think he's got to figure out what the Lakers do with the rest of the offseason. At this point, they're not off to a good start. They lost Dorian Finney-Smith. They tried to get Brook Lopez. They didn't get Brook Lopez. That would have helped a lot. And right now, they're looking at DeAndre Ayton, who I don't think is the most reliable big man in the world. But they still have, an incredible hole in terms of wing depth because they've now lost Dorian Finney-Smith. So, LeBron's going to have to figure some things out. And I think that he's going to take the rest of the offseason to kind of look and see what the Lakers do with the roster, and then, kind of try to evaluate his options from there.
You just brought up something interesting about the Bronny situation. Like, is LeBron influential enough post-retirement that the league will treat his sons differently when he's not on an active roster. I mean, I think LeBron's going to be part of an ownership group sooner than later when he's done playing. But is he important enough, influential enough as a non-player that his sons get treated differently when he retires?
Well, nobody is. No. That's not going to happen. I mean, when LeBron retires, Bronny's going to be on his own. And the good news for Bronny is I think that Bronny is an NBA player. I just don't think that he was an NBA player last year, and I don't know that he's going to be an NBA player this year. And that's where, having his father really helps. But if you look at Bronny and you look at the skill set the NBA needs, you look at Bronny's athleticism, you look at Bronny's defense, there are models of a 10-year NBA player there. He's a lot like Gary Payton. He's a lot like Gary Payton II as a player. And Gary Payton II's been around for a long time. It just took Gary Payton II a long time to break through because he and Bronny were a lot alike, around the same age. So, that's where having LeBron helps keep him around, keep him on an NBA roster. And we're going to find out a lot more in Summer League because Bronny's going to be playing Summer League coming up. So we're going to see, what kind of improvements that he's made or what kind of improvements that he hasn't made. But, he's always been, he was a project when he came onto the roster, and he's probably a 3 or 4 year project. And then at that point, he's 23, 24 years old, and you see what you really have. But if LeBron retires after next year, or if he retires after the year after next, then it's going to be sink or swim for Bronny, and we're going to see whether he can last on his own as an NBA level talent. So it's I think people are unfair when they say that Bronny has no business playing in the NBA. I don't agree with that at all. I think he's an NBA player, but having your father there, is giving him a foot in the door, and that's what a lot of us need, and that's what some of us get on our own, and then that's where some of us get through family type of connection. So it's definitely something that bears playing out over the next year or two, and we'll see what happens.
You gonna flex like Bron in order to help your daughter out in the business?
I will do anything to help my daughter out in the business. If I could get my daughter a job, I'm gonna get her a job, and I'm gonna say that I'm proud of it because I'm a good father, and I'm proud of my daughter, and I think my daughter has a lot of talent and a lot of potential. So there ain't no shame in my game.
Look, I'm not above nepotism either. I'm not going to pretend. What is Ace Bailey going to be in a Utah Jazz uniform?
That depends on Ace Bailey, And here's the thing, I think I made this point on Twitter last night, but if Ace Bailey never works on his game, only improves incrementally because, strength and experience and things like that, he can still top out as a 20 points per game scorer. I mean, he's that talented offensively. I mean, he's probably the best or the second best shot maker in the draft. He's 6'9". He's such a bouncy athlete. I mean, he has so many tools offensively. But if Ace Bailey wants to be a star or a superstar or an all-NBA level player, then there are flaws in his game that he needs to fix. He is not a passer. And, he has not been a playmaker for others, and he really, really needs to fix that because every superstar on the face of the earth is a playmaker for others. So, that has to come a long way. And, Ace's shot diet has to drastically improve. And the shot diet is what it is because Ace isn't proficient off the dribble. So he's got to get a lot better off the dribble. He's got to tighten the handle. He's got to figure that out. He's got to figure his left hand out. And then, he's got to figure out a way to beat people in isolation situations, and play the spots and not let defenders dictate what spots he has to play at. Somebody made a really good point to me last night when I was talking about this on Twitter, that Ace to this point has gotten by on his athleticism and the fact that he could pretty much do what he wants to at the high school level, being 6'9", being able to just shoot over 95% of the high school players that he plays against. Now he's got to play basketball because everybody at this level is big. Everybody at this level has length and athleticism, and everybody at this level can do a whole bunch of things. So now Ace has to really work. And the good news is he's by all accounts he's a worker. He loves the game of basketball, and he's going to get into the gym and he's going to work. So the question of what Ace becomes is going to depend on Ace. He's not, to me, he's not Cooper Flagg, who I think is a can't miss prospect. He's not Ace. He's not Dylan Harper, who comes into the league, kind of a five tool offensive prospect. But he has a chance to be at that tier when all is said and done if he really works at it. So, that's the tantalizing part. He is the guy outside of the top two that has the upside to be a superstar one day. So now it's about whether the Jazz and whether Ace can get each other to that superstar status that, will help the Utah Jazz.
The rumor, the innuendo surrounding his desire or lack of desire to be in certain places, is that all water under the bridge? Nothing to worry about, from this point forward? I mean, he reported, he showed up, he's practicing, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. It was a level of concern, or there was a level of concern for a moment, but is that all the way behind him and this Utah Jazz franchise?
Well, that depends on how both parties move forward. I will say this. Everything that was reported in terms of what's going on behind the scenes is accurate. I mean, that's it has not been easy behind the scenes. And furthermore, it wasn't easy behind the scenes after Ace got drafted. The first couple of days were really, really, really rocky. So, the good news is that Ace showed up. He got off the plane. He was smiling. He hugged Coach Hardy. Everything else beyond that has been relatively smooth, and he's here and he's working. But the 48 hours after Ace got drafted were really hard for the Utah Jazz. That's about all I'll say about that, but it was really hard. So, to me, I think a lot of this wasn't fair to Ace because I think he got caught in the middle of a lot of this. But now, it's done. He's here. He's going to make a summer league debut. So we'll see what happens, beyond that, and we'll see what happens, behind the scenes. But, the good news is for the Jazz is that he is definitely here and he's working, and, and it can be about basketball right now.
Before I let you go, are you watching Wimbledon already, or will you be tuning in once we get it?
Absolutely.
All right.
Oh, absolutely. But did Zverev win? Did he win? I know he was struggling.
I didn't see.
Okay.
I'm watching right now, and Coco just dropped her first set. Just started. So.
Oh well, I got to definitely turn it on. Yeah, I watch all the majors. I'm a tennis geek.
He lost. Zev lost. James just whispered in the ear, said that lost in 5 sets. So there's your update.
Yeah, the problem with Wimbledon, in maybe to a lesser extent the French Open, the French Open, you can watch kind of at like 4 a.m. and I'm always up at 4 a.m. The problem at Wimbledon is that they were at like 7 a.m. and it's a little harder for me to watch. But I was watching Zev play and I was watching that match, and I know he was really, really struggling with somebody that was unranked. So that's interesting that he didn't make it out of that.
Tony, you're the man. Appreciate your time and your expertise as always, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you, and I appreciate James very much.
Tony Jones from The Athletic, Utah Jazz, Denver Nuggets, NBA insider. You're going to what?
I want to, if we've got time next segment.
We got time, James.
I want to zag on his Lillard. He zigged to say, why would the Jazz want Lillard? Why would Lillard want the Jazz? I want to zag and give the Jazz some hope. Give Jazz fans some hope.
All right. James is going to breathe some hope into our ridiculous Damian Lillard to the Utah Jazz ideas. That's next on the Sean O'Connell Show, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Guys, I have news you're not going to like hearing. All right. We usually, when you talk about people being hormonal, you're usually inaccurately referring to it being somebody else, somebody on the opposite side of things. We don't acknowledge that our own hormones as men get out of whack, especially as we age. And if that's happening and it's affecting your mood, affecting your sleep, affecting your body composition, you feel yourself gaining weight even though the diet's okay and even though you're exercising a little bit, it's a hormone problem. Address it. Do it right now. My friends down at the Steel Vault in Holiday can take care of it for you. Right there in the heart of Holiday, next to that brand new development where the Harmons is at and all that stuff. The Steel Vault can hook you up with, first of all, the testing that you need to assess where your hormone levels are at, and then more importantly, the hormone therapy treatments to get you back to feeling like you're in your early to mid-20s again when you were in your physical and honestly probably mental prime. SteelVault.com, 801-878-9976, a one-stop shop. They can do the cosmetic stuff for you, fix the hair, fix the wrinkles. But if what's inside, the hormones and those levels are affecting you, you can't procrastinate that. You can't put that off. Go to SteelVault.com. That's STEELE, vault.com. Click the big Book Now button. And when you do, mention ESPN 700 or the Sean O'Connell Show. You get 20% off any treatment. SteelVault.com or 801-878-9976. Mention us to get the discount. All right, James Peterson. We were just talking with Tony Jones about this. And somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I'm like, let's get Damian Lillard to Salt Lake City. He is one of the few NBA stars that has always been very pro-Utah. Obviously, he played his college ball here up in Ogden, and he has been at least agreeable to the notion of playing for the Utah Jazz. He's going to be sitting out a year anyway. Let's get him here. Let's sell some jerseys, James.
Exactly. That was my thought. That's what I presented to you before the show. Also very tongue-in-cheek because it does seem like pie-in-the-sky, pipe dream type stuff, and Tony Jones dismissed it out of hand. Now, I'll tell you this. It's still, I'm not going to say it's likely. I'm going to agree with the NBA insider in that there's probably no traction here, but I'll give you some reasons why Jazz fans, you might start to get your hopes up a little bit for it, okay? Number one, he's not playing next year. So we all know the situation with the Jazz's pick this year. The rights are owned by the Oklahoma City Thunder, but it's top 8 protected. So if the Jazz are 7th or worse in the lottery next year, they keep the pick. If they are better than that in the lottery, the Thunder get their lottery pick. Now, here's the deal with that pick. This is the last year that it matters. If it does not convey this year, Oklahoma State gets nothing.
Oklahoma State?
Excuse me, Oklahoma City.
Cowboys?
Oklahoma City gets nothing, excuse me. OKC gets nothing. So a lot of those similar situations, if it doesn't convey as the first round pick that it initially was when the team acquired it, it becomes like a second round pick. But in this case, this is the last year. If Utah does this right, if they tank right once again, and that means getting 7th or better.
You mean
pick,
tank right for the first time?
For the first time, yeah. Then Oklahoma City doesn't get anything from the Jazz. So the reason I bring that up is you acquired Damian Lillard now after he clears waivers. He's not going to help you be any better. Okay, you can also do what Tony Jones said and develop Collier, Keontae, and some of these younger guys, Sensabaugh, these younger guys that you want to develop. Clayton, this year's first round pick. You can do that this year, one more year. Then Dame comes in post Achilles injury next year. And from that point on, OC, I don't see why the Jazz wouldn't just try to win as many games as they want from that point on. Because I'm looking at the other outgoing picks from 2027 on. There's nothing like the Oklahoma City one where it's like you better you better be worse than this or you don't want that team to get your pick. There's nothing like that. There's some pick swaps. There's nothing quite like that. So I don't see why the Jazz 26-27 season wouldn't be the one where they start going, okay, let's see how good we can be. Let's build the roster as best we can, and let's actually try to win games. That's why I would say, why not try to get Damian Lillard? Also, you're probably going to get him at much lesser price because he is rehabbing the Achilles this year. Now, it is fair to say he probably would rather be on Miami. He'd probably rather be on a team that's much closer to win a championship, and the Jazz won't be close to win a championship in maybe not for the rest of Dame's career. But you never know if Dame recovers well enough that he's anything close to what he is pre-Achilles. And they're able to, and Ace hits, and Lowry and Walker are still on the roster. Lowry's still a borderline All-NBA player. In the parity era of the league, I'm just saying this would be the best time to make a swing like this, in my opinion. I'm not sure it's happening, though.
I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't hate your logic because the only thing there that you could easily poke holes in is the Damian Lillard being what he was before the injury. Like, the problem is these injuries with certain concoctions that these players are able to put in their bodies, like what used to be a season-ending injury or a career-ending injury is no longer that. Medical science, hormone therapies, particularly human growth hormone therapies, help people to recover better, more completely, etc.
I was going to do a Steel Vault shout out because you said hormone therapies, but a little bit different.
But still, Damian Lillard is just like, even if he's back to what he was when he injured himself, he's still the 34-year-old when he injured himself. You know what I mean? Like, this is not 28-year-old Damian Lillard anymore.
I think it's worth considering taking a flyer if you're Austin Ainge, and maybe they probably won't, because there's so many other reasons why Dame wouldn't want to be in Utah than the Jazz would want him in Utah. But
here's what I want.
It's worth considering, I would think.
All I need is for Damian Lillard at some point to be in a Jazz uniform so that we can hang the Damian Lillard Utah Jazz uniform on the wall of our studio.
Yeah,
That's
zero.
it.
The
That's
zero.
all we need.
Even if he does the old,
Purple
I'm
Mountain
retired
Zero.
already, but I'm going to sign a one-day contract so I end my career with the Jazz.
Yeah.
He'll do that with the Blazers.
He'll do that with the Blazers.
but
how mad would
even if
Blazers
it's just for that reason, like, let's get a Damian Lillard Jazz jersey.
How mad would Blazers? Imagine this, okay? The year is 2029. Damian Lillard is announcing his retirement. And by the way, we have found out between now and 2029 that Portland's bid to get a Major League Baseball team has been usurped by Salt Lake City's bid to get a Major League Baseball team. So Portland is already mad at us. And then Damian Lillard goes, I'm going to retire as a Utah Jazz man. Blazers fans are like, wait, what? You never even played for them. And
well, they're purple now, and Weber State's purple, and Utah, and that's why.
And the Utah Jazz are the catalyst for a Portland versus Salt Lake City civil war where it's us versus a bunch of hipsters with weird mustaches.
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Let's make it happen, Dame.
All right. I don't think it's going to, but
no.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Jones gave the answer I expected, that it is as pie in the sky as it sounds, but I don't think that I don't think it's makes zero sense from the Jazz's perspective as Tony Jones suggested it probably does.
All right, we'll wrap up the Sean O'Connell Show. Next, send you into the drive with Spence Checketts. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. The Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up right now on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Don't forget to start your engines, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Excited to announce Monster Jam World Finals coming to Utah July 4th and 5th. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster.com. Spence will be there almost certainly for the 4th of July weekend, Monster Jammin'.
I never miss a monster truck event. You know me.
I know that.
Mr. Big Claw. Is that a truck?
It is now.
It sounds like it could be.
That would be an awesome one.
It would. Have you been to a monster truck event?
Long, like when I was a kid, I went to a monster truck event, but I haven't been as a grown person.
I think I went on a date once in high school to a monster truck event.
Okay.
If I remember
fun.
correctly.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. Out at the Maverick Center in West Valley.
All right.
And then not since.
Oh, well.
I'm not anti. I just haven't had the opportunity.
Like, he'll be there, so go say hi to Spence.
Yeah. See me there.
July 4th and 5th. All right, start bench cut.
Ooh, who we got today?
We have Utah running backs in the pre-Power 5 era.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Eddie Johnson,
Okay.
Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala,
Mm-hmm.
Mike Anderson. Start one, bench one, cut one.
I am partial to Eddie Johnson.
Okay.
Because he spoke at my elementary school the year that they beat BYU. That crazy upset win they had.
Okay.
It was Eddie Johnson, and do you remember who the quarterback was on that team? Can't remember who the QB was, but it was Eddie and the quarterback. So I'm going to start Eddie because I'm partial to Eddie.
Okay. He is also the second all-time rush leader right behind Zach Moss.
Okay.
Second all-time.
I'm going to bench Mike because I want the poly in the mix. I want Fuamata Malafala in the mix, even though he's not starting.
So you're cutting Mike and you're benching Chris.
Yes, and I'm starting
Okay.
Eddie.
Okay.
Personal preference.
All right. I like it. Starter fireworks. Start one, bench one, cut one.
Ooh.
Poppets, sparklers, smoke bombs.
You got to bench sparklers. You got to bench sparklers.
Okay.
You got to sit the poppets, and you can start the smoke bombs.
You're starting smoke
You
bombs.
got to start smoke bombs.
You and Tony Jones both started smoke bombs.
That's bad news. But that's you can get yourself into some trouble with some smoke bombs.
We had Bill Riley on earlier today. He summarily cut smoke bombs aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was mad that these were not high-intensity fireworks. Bill, a bit of a pyro.
That's not that surprising.
I mean, a little bit.
Bill has that side of himself, the look in his eye that at times if he wants to get in trouble. Who did he start?
He ended up starting this poppet.
Okay. Did anyone? Yeah, you can't. Did anyone start sparklers?
No, I don't think anyone did.
Okay, you can't.
James had made a case for sparklers because you could trace your name in the.
Yeah,
when you're 6.
But I benched him.
Okay.
I started the poppets. I cut smoke bombs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's probably the safest play to cut smoke bombs because that's the easiest way to get in trouble of those 3.
Yeah. Although the sparkler, there's like the metal stick in the sparkler, and that is a glowing hot metal stick.
Can
when
get
you're done
dangerous.
Sparkling. As a father of young children, I'm just like, stop, no, make 12 feet between you.
Yeah, no, that's smart because that can burn you. I'll tell you what, being a dog owner has actually made me somewhat anti-firework because Duke hates 4th of July, hates Pioneer Day. He cowers up in a corner, man. He cries the whole time.
Obviously, that's common. There's a lot of dogs who feel that way. I've never had a dog that felt that way. I've never had a dog that reacted to them at all.
What's your new pup's name?
Rocky.
This will be Rocky's first 4th of July experience.
Rocky's first 4th of July.
We'll
and
have to see.
Desensitizing him already.
You've already started the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
I put him in his crate, and I threw some fireworks in there.
Okay.
No, just
Hopefully
kidding.
no one's listening.
Just kidding. Humane Society.
Leave us alone. We
ASPCA.
didn't really do that.
That would never happen. He's a sweet boy, and I would not do that to him.
Yeah, we went out for 4th of July, left Duke home for a couple hours, came home, and he was under the bed like shaking.
Yeah.
So I've kind of become anti-firework in my old age. I'm getting soft.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
Still love America, crypto, Rogan. I'm on board. Come on. I'm on board.
In that order.
Yes, in that order.
Okay.
And there's more if you want to go. I want to do a start bench cut.
Start bench cut.
Things I love about America. I'm going to text something into you.
Start bench cut. Joe Rogan, crypto, Elon.
And Doge. Can we add Doge to the picks?
What's coming up on the drive?
Oh, the latest on NBA free agency. NHL free agency started today. The Utah Mammoth made, I think, 3 signings. A bunch of former Utes got paid. Jakob Poeltl got paid.
How about that?
Yeah, good for him, man. He gets lost in the shuffle. We always do like the which college players from the state have had the best NBA career. Jakob is a player that deserves more credit than he gets. Now, the best college player of this generation just got waived and stretched over a 4-year period in Damian Lillard. So we'll talk a little Dame, what it means for his career, and yeah, what's next for the Jazz? You know, same old stuff.
Yeah, Poeltl, the largest contract ever signed by a former Ute.
Yeah, well, what about Kuz? No, this would be bigger than Kyle's contract. That's right. I think Kyle signed like a $70 or $80 million deal.
This is $104 million.
Good for Jakob, man. Good kid. Proud of him.
Wow. That NBA money. I should have been tall.
Well, I don't think you had a choice there, Sean.
No. Stay tuned for The Drive. Thank you for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow with some more start bench cut, and we're going to move into the running backs in the Pac-12 era. Ouch. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.